Peter, we are here once again to give, I don't know, a good show thing to the audience, whatever our goal is, to be entertaining, you know.
Exactly.
I guess that's probably more of like the secondary goal. The main goal is to like form a parasocial relationship with people and then they give us their money. And
I
then,
do like that idea.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I do also. And then also like video game companies that make games that we like will send us free copies of
Mm,
them or things like that.
sponsorships.
Those are
That's
yeah, those are
big.
like the main reasons, and then the secondary one is like, oh yeah, people should be entertained by listening to the two of
Yeah.
us in their free time or whatever. Um, so yeah, it's been the new year for us. By the time previous episodes were uploaded, it would have already have been taking place. But I guess this sort of month of things covers like end of December or started December 2024 into early January 2025. We haven't really been establishing that. I don't know if we need to necessarily. Like this covers this month chunk of time. Like I don't know in the description or
Yeah.
something. Whatever, man. We just
We'll
do it
make it
whenever we can.
happen. Indeed.
Yeah.
Have you
But
been watching anything good in this past month or
ooh,
so then?
ooh. Okay,
Anything worth talking
for
about?
movies, I will start us off with a bit of a banger here.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
there's this director, Lars von Trier, the most pretentious director in
Mm.
existence, and most of the movies that
Completely
he
non-problematic. Has
definitely not.
never. Yeah, no.
He probably is in some ways. I don't really know. I mean, he's just kind of weird. Like, he just
He
feels like kind of
is.
a pervert. I don't know if like he
I
legitimately
think
is one
that's
or not, but that's
fair.
just the
Yeah.
vibe that he gives off
Hmm.
because his films are pretty weird and out there, and pretentious, and maybe other words. But I do somehow, in the end, find myself enjoying most of them. I think most of them are sort of decent overall. There's sort of like only a few of them that I sort of think are not so good. But this most recent one that I saw from him is like, I mean, just one of my favorite movies ever by now. That being Dancer in the Dark.
Yes,
And
yes, yes.
this movie absolutely destroyed me, Peter. This
That's
film broke
so
me.
real.
Yeah, and
So
you've
real.
seen this one too, and it's like,
Yes, this is the only Lars von Trier film I've
oh, the only
watched
one
yet.
you've seen.
So
So you started with
it
the peak.
started strong. I mean, I guess strong
Yeah,
is certainly one way to put it. This movie, I agree, is absolutely devastating.
yeah,
But it was a great introduction to his style. I
yeah,
feel like he's a bit of an intimidating filmmaker to get into his body of work, just because
totally.
there is so much like kind of extra baggage that usually comes with a lot of his movies. But Dancer in the Dark with Bjork, a
Oh yeah, yeah.
great
Which
performance
who
by
we had
her.
mentioned last time. I called her Bjord for a little bit. I
Yeah,
confused
yes, we did.
myself somehow. But yeah, and it's like this is like the only musical he's done, which I didn't even
Yeah,
think I knew that it was this going into it. And it reminded
neither
me
did
of
I.
Joker Folie à Deux, where you got a musical of like during like prison shit. There's like a scene of
Hmm.
this that takes place in prison. And it's like, oh my god, like a real
It's like
like
the
an
same
actual
movie.
legitimately good version
Wow.
of it.
Yeah,
And the songs are nice, and like visually what's going on is really awesome. Like
yeah.
the visuals that accompany the music, like both are nice, you know.
It's a very interesting take on the musical,
Yeah,
just
it's
because like it seems very obviously in our main character's head,
yeah,
but also it's like a lot of the sounds that are being produced are very like diegetic and like
yeah. Like
one
things that
time it's
are
just like
taking place
happening
like in the
in a
scene. Like there's
factory.
there's the factory one where they're
Yep.
like doing like they're printing down random shit and that like gets incorporated into the song. Like yeah, it's got that weird mix of it's in her head but also utilizing like the shit around her in what
Hmm.
would be realistic ways, I
Yeah.
suppose. But the word dark is in the title. It's it's simultaneously to me like something very positive, but also something like I'd say
Very
overall it's
cynical. Yeah.
positive, but yeah, it is. You definitely feel like a strong mix of both, I think.
It's very bittersweet.
Yeah,
But man, does like because it's real. It is like you said, like kind of optimistic and sweet in the
in some
very
ways, yeah.
beginning, and then it gets
It
much
pummels
much
you
darker.
down. It pummels you the
Yeah.
fuck down. And yeah, it's a hard watch for sure. Like if you're somebody who's like, there are plenty of people out there who only want like the good like the feel good type of
Yeah,
shit. This is
yeah.
not those at all.
Certainly not.
This is not
No,
that.
this one will wreck
And
you.
most of
If
Lars
you're
von
looking for
Trier's
one-
stuff is not that also. They're
Yeah,
also kind of
yeah.
like very cynical and like negative and like down on sort of life in general.
Yeah.
But I mean, I
Strange
think you should
director.
check out some of his other stuff.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
again,
It-
you are starting
it's
with
been
the
on my
top,
list.
in my opinion. But like, he does make like noteworthy out there things. Whether you think they're
Real
good or
art
not,
house
that's fine.
cinema.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
Kino.
totally. It's
Kino.
super. It's
Mhm.
super art house. Super.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I do have to make my way slowly through that.
Yeah. Take your time. Don't do it. Don't do it all at once.
Yeah,
Don't do that.
I think
Don't hit
he
it all
deserves
in
a
a
little
weekend.
more from me.
Yeah. But I would highly like super recommend this thing. Like if you can handle it, if you're tough
Yeah.
enough.
It's an excellent movie.
Yeah.
It makes you feel things that no other movie has, and I think it's very strong for it.
Yeah. I feel the same, man.
Speaking of movies that have made us feel some type of way,
Oh, okay.
indescribable, one might say,
A way.
I took it upon myself to catch back up on all of the Disney remakes that I had not been watching in some time. Specifically, all of the Disney live action remakes, which
Oh no.
I'm just gonna kind of group them all up because I have a
Sure.
lot of other movies I want to talk about.
Yeah,
Good
yeah.
movies, but in
Real
order to get
shit.
there, we have to
Yeah.
go through the darkness that is the Disney.
We'll
live
get
action
the bad
remake
shit out of the
space.
way right
Yeah,
now.
we really do need to because man,
The dark era.
I'll say it now. I didn't like any of the movies.
Damn.
I think I watched. Let's see. So I watched The Lion King, Aladdin,
Mm-hmm.
Pinocchio, Beauty and the Beast, Cinderella, The Little Mermaid, The Jungle Book, Dumbo, and then another Cinderella.
Yeah. Which I think
And-
one of those Cinderellas is not
One of them is
technically
not Disney,
part of the
yes.
like it's not
Yes,
officially whatever
technically.
made by Disney, but you still
But,
checked
man,
it out
these
anyways
are all.
for fun.
I'm a completionist, and I watched them all. And I wish. I mean, I didn't have to. I like. There was no
Yeah.
reason for me to watch any of these.
Nobody is forcing you.
No one forced me to. I took it upon myself, and I have to live with that because I mean, none of these movies are good. They're all so incredibly redundant. Like as you're watching these movies, you'll pick up on things like, oh, this is nostalgic. I kind of remember this, especially when it comes to the score. The scores are carrying a lot of the weight in these movies, and the reason is because that helps the audience to just kind of be transported back in time
Yeah.
at the same score, so it brings you back to better times, and it helps you remind you of, wow, this movie that I'm watching currently was once a better movie that I could have been watching right now, but I'm not. And so
Which is never a
there
good
is-
feeling.
it's never a good feeling. It means that the entire experience you're having is redundant, and not to mention redundant, but worse. It's just like worse in every way. I guess I'll kind of zero in on a lot of the problems I think the epitome of these problems was The Lion King, the 2019 live action
Yeah, in
Lion
quotes.
King.
Yeah.
Like, what are we talking about here, live action? There's not a single. I don't know if there's like any real footage in this entire movie. It's all CGI. So calling it live action is
it's
incredibly self-masturbatory. But it's a marketing thing, and that's all the movie was, and it worked.
Yeah, because
It
like
worked.
nobody gives a shit. Like I remember my like parents or like other relatives being like, "It's gonna be
Exactly.
a live action." It's like, no, it's not. It's not it at
Yeah.
all, bro.
It's like that doesn't make sense. How can you say that? It's clearly not. Did they film the lines? No, they didn't.
You were brainwashed. It happened to you.
It's bad.
believe
Though. It's I mean, there have been numerous video essays delving
yeah.
into why
Yeah.
this thing is bad. Specifically, YMS, Your Movie Sucks, has one of the best, takedowns
Yeah.
of a film that I've maybe seen. Part one, at least. I'm
Yeah,
still
and he
waiting on
still
part
hasn't
two.
dropped part 2 yet. Which is
But it'll happen eventually
Yeah,
in
I'm-
another
I'm waiting.
5 or so
I'm
years.
waiting for that.
Yeah. I'm not waiting, holding breath, but
Yeah.
he does such a good job of explaining exactly why every decision they made was wrong
Mm-hmm.
when you compare it to a movie that came out however 30 years ago now.
Yeah, some
Not quite, but like it's just insane how much worse a movie can be when you lose the value that the original had. When you're trying to remake something without having any kind of grasp on what made the original one good, and you do it purely for the profit, The Lion King 2019 is exactly what you get. And it's depressing that because it was such a success. People watched it. Millions of people watched it, and it got them millions of dollars. So now they just chose to continue that kind of paper trail, and obviously watched 9 or so of the live actions that were coming out at the same time. And
yeah, because they were doing this shit like back to back.
it was back. Exactly.
Like
Lion King wasn't even the first one, but like it was one of the like they were
started
all
in like 2018
successful to
or
some extent,
17, and then continued that until like post-COVID stuff, I think.
yeah. And
they're still sort of
will
doing it.
continue to.
There was that
Oh, yeah.
recent Mufasa one that nobody gives a shit about.
Yep.
And I think now we're finally at the point where it's like, okay, people don't like, no, they don't want these anymore. I think
I don't know
because there's still the Moana one that I think they're still making.
still
Or
a Moana
there was a
one, yeah.
sequel to Moana. There's Moana 2 out, but I think there was still a separate live action thing.
Yeah, there were plans for that.
Yeah.
I think there were probably plans for a Frozen one,
Oh, yeah.
and then there's plans for literally any. There's
The
a Snow White
remaining
coming
ones.
out. Snow White's coming out this
Aristocats.
year. Yeah, it's a whole lot of, you
Yeah.
know, cultural bankruptcy, and it is depressing. But this was the dark before
The dark
dawn.
saga.
As the rest of December, I had some great movies.
Dark
but we'll save
December.
that for later. Yeah.
Yeah, because to bring up YMS again, he puts it pretty good where it's like they remind you of these like other better ones, so that you pay to like watch these new ones, and then you go to like the subscription service that has the older ones on it, and then you just watch those there to like because
Yeah,
they
it's
remind you of like,
crazy.
oh, there's
It's
this
all
better thing
marketing.
that exists, and then it's like, oh well, I'm just gonna go watch that better thing because I remember that it exists, and I just want to see like
it's insane.
how much better it is or whatever. And I've been largely avoiding these Disney live action remakes, just for the point of like
you can still ignore them.
Yeah.
Like, there's no reason to
I
watch
plan
them.
to.
I'm telling you right now.
But I was doing it sort of for the purpose of like, because like even negative advertising or press is
Right.
like good
Yeah.
press, but like I mean I don't know, since you mentioned them, I guess it doesn't really matter. Of like people like aren't gonna, I don't think, check it out because just for the
No.
fact that we're discussing it, Like I
Exactly.
trust our viewers to, if they do want to check it out, they can just pirate it. I don't know. They can just not pay Disney $20 for the.
There are ways of accessing media for free that you would be surprised of.
Yeah.
Internet's a crazy place.
Oh yeah. But yeah, wow, it's I guess it's commendable that you took the plunge, that you decided to do that to yourself. I mean, it's
I had watched so many franchises
you're like,
over
yeah, I
the
have
course
to.
of
I must keep
2024
punishing
that
myself.
I had to end it off, with
2024
one of
for
the
you was the franchise
haymaker.
year. Now you're out of it, right? Mostly.
Yeah.
Mostly. You're halfway through. The bad
I'm not
ones.
gonna- I'm
Are
not
there
gonna do
remaining
that
bad
again.
ones that exist?
There's
that you wanna
always
see?
remaining
There
bad
always
ones.
are.
I want to watch the Underworld ones.
I might have seen the first
and there are a
one.
few other ones that I want to watch. But there's like 1,000,001.
Is Underworld based
franchises.
on a comic, or is it just its own movie thing?
That's a great question.
Because it feels
I
like
don't
it's
even
based
know.
on.
It does
I
feel
don't
like
know.
that, doesn't it? But also,
I have
there's
no
like
idea, though.
however many, 5 of them, and like they
There's
blend
these,
together with the Resident Evil movies.
Oh yeah, you should watch the
'Cause I
Resident Evil ones.
same,
Those
like-
suck so much ass.
Yeah.
Those
I
are
will-
some of those are like
another
some of the
just
worst
another
shits.
franchise for the list.
Yeah, but those are
Another-
like the more entertaining than whatever fucking Disney live action shits.
Mhm. Yeah.
But yeah, the next one I got is this documentary, or not a documentary. What the fuck am I saying? It's a biopic of Bob Dylan called "I'm Not There."
Oh, you did
not
watch it.
not
Oh,
to
it's
be
a different one.
confused
Oh, shit,
with
okay.
the most recent one that came out with the
Yes.
Timothy Chalamet
Okay.
one. It's not that one. It's a different one from like a past time. I'll look up the date, but like it's for a biopic. It's pretty interesting. It's from 2007.
Okay.
And like most biopics, they don't advertise themselves as this, but they're like, rather than depict like an accurate portrayal of here's who this person is. It's sort of more like idealized, let's suck this person off a little bit for $1 billion type of thing. And that's what this thing is, but like more openly. Like it's not pretending to be, this is literally who he is at all times. Because it's like the way it's set up is pretty interesting, where rather than it's just you're taking you from like start to finish of their life, like how they got into music and then like how they rose to fame or whatever, and then beyond. It's sort of taking you all across, like skipping you from like you're at this point in his life, now you're here, and now you're here. And the way they portray that is by getting 6 different people to act as him at like different stages of his life, and all of these stages of his life like aren't literally him. They're more of like different sorts of like personas of him, either through like the songs he was making at the time, or like sort of like a mix of who he thought he was or who he wanted to be, and like who the public sort of like how they viewed him as like as a figure. And it creates like a pretty interesting and bit more out there like biopic. And like the people they get to play him, like some of them make a lot of sense, but some of them are also really surprising. Like they don't get typical people who you would like think, oh yeah, this person would play Bob Dylan.
I have seen like a clip of.
Oh, okay. No, don't spoil it.
Yeah.
I'll bleep it. Because I think it's kind of cool going into it like not knowing that, you know, like I had no idea like that person was portraying Bob Dylan, and it's like when it appears, it's like, oh, they actually kind of pull that off, you know, like it's surprising.
I've been meaning to watch that one.
Yeah,
and
it's
a good time too.
Yeah, it's a decent time overall. It's like, but like because you're going back and forth between these dudes, like it gets kind of weird, and like, okay, what's the point of all this? Like I get it, we're sucking them off a little bit, but it's like it's hard to like just piece it all together and like form like a solid like, okay, this is what I got out of it sort of thing, other than it just being like a cool experiment, which to me that's mostly what it is, rather than like a full-fledged like here's a you know a really solid story type of thing. So yeah, it's for as far as biopics go, I'd say it's on the like better side of them, but it's like quite different for like better or for worse depending on like who you are, because some people do just want like that like I just want to see that full start to finish, let me suck them off for 2.5 hours or whatever, and that's not totally what this is, but it's still like noteworthy and interesting in some ways. So I would recommend it though, like even if you, I mean, I don't know, if you don't like Bob Dylan, like sure, don't watch it I guess, but if you're like sort of moderately interested in him, I'd say do it.
All right. On my end, you know how I said it was The Dark Before the Dawn? I guess I kind of forgot what else I had watched.
Oh, no.
Because in this case, the dawn comes in the form of the Sony cinematic universe. The Sony Marvel cinematic universe?
I don't know what you call
Venom
it, but I know what
Craven.
you're talking about.
Yes. Venom and Craven. I watched Venom 3 and Craven the Hunter, which both came out this year. Crazy. So did Madam Web, didn't it? Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah.
This is a legendary,
bangers only.
A legendary year. Morbius didn't come out this year. I think Morbius came out 2 years ago. No. Yeah. But man, these are some. I don't know how to even describe these movies. I've now watched all of them, and it's just whereas the Disney cinematic universe is now like mired in like corporate greed and bankruptcy. The Sony cinematic universe is mired in complete ineptitude and like the lack of any filmmaking skills whatsoever. I don't know how it happened, because like
desperation sort of stuff.
It's not a director thing. It's not an actor thing. Like clearly, the most recent Craven the Hunter director is J.C. Chandor, who also like did a Most Violent Year, which I know of, and Triple Frontier. Like he's made good movies, but like it's so clear in each of them, in each of these Sony movies, that like they had their hands tied. They were beholden to the script and whatever the studio wanted from them. Because man, it's the writing. not a single person wrote one script. It had to have been
Just
like a
ChatGPT,
community
right?
kind of thing, or
Yeah.
ChatGPT. I don't know. I
Okay.
can only speculate, but it's not something that anyone would ever write. Like none of these lines of dialogue are real. Like it's the most movie you'll ever watch. The Venom ones are a little better because they're a little funnier. Like they're pretty stupid and goofy, and like they're not trying to like play it
They
off
treat
as
themselves a
more.
little bit less seriously.
Exactly, which is also a problem in and of itself because like the Venom movies are so stupid and are so goofy that like I don't really care about any of
Yeah.
the characters. And like in the last one, there's an incredibly funny ending where there's a montage moment of a character with like the Maroon 5 playing in the background and it's just like shots from each of the previous 3 movies. And it's just like, what are we doing here? I was cracking up so loud and I'm like, they are trying to play this off as serious now, but man, this does not work in the context that you placed this movie in.
It's not Furious 7. You think you're laughing
It's
with
not.
them. You're laughing at them type
No,
of thing.
I'm laughing at them like 100%. Because like, man, yeah, they tried to play it off sappy, but they shot themselves in the foot for 3 movies that I'm not gonna feel that way. And the problem, and then they like flip-flopped from having it too goofy to Kraven the Hunter, which is not goofy enough, like not anywhere near as goofy. Like they tried to play it off as so straight, and he's such a cold-hearted killer, and he's cool because he's fighting villains. But man, there's zero personality. The writing is awful. All of the characters are like drowned under this terrible dialogue. And the plot itself is incredibly predictable by the books with like no personality. Man, I can't believe that they had 3 awful movies, generationally bad, like with Kraven the Hunter and Madam Web. Like this studio needs to die. They need to let these franchises go.
Yeah.
Let them go to like better people. It's kind of like it's somewhat well known at this point that like the only reason they're using like these characters like Kraven or like Madam Web to make movies is because like the
rights.
license is expiring. Like you need to use the rights in order to get them. And if this is what we're getting, bro, just let it pass, man.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
These are not worth it. You're losing money every time you send one of these to the box office. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what they expect. They expect a Venom because Venom was somewhat successful.
Yeah,
And
like even
each
though
time they
it
try-
sucks, it did get money, the first one,
Yeah,
especially.
but man, not anymore. And they're running thin on the cultural
They're running out of
kind
dudes.
of welfare that
Yeah.
people are having towards them. So just let it go. They don't need to make any more of these.
Yeah, move on, Sony. Yeah.
Please.
I did see a banger from this past year in the theaters, which I don't often do. I'm usually like, I'll just wait until it's whatever. But I did see one in theaters because my brothers sort of roped me into that, and it was Sonic the Hedgehog 3, which is the 3rd installment of these, I guess, the live action whatever Sonic the Hedgehog films.
Right.
And out of the 3 of them, this one genuinely is the best out of all of them.
Really?
Because
Okay.
it like with each one, like the first one, it felt like this weird in between of like this thing sort of trying to cater to everybody and to like a wider sort of audience, while also like having like very small things every once in a while for like the really hardcore fan to like get into and appreciate about it. And like with each entry, we've gone more and more into the side of like, all right, let's cater to the people who like fuck around with these, types of things. And out of all of them, I was most excited for this one because it had Shadow, which so I played Shadow the Hedgehog during my formative years. Okay, on the GameCube, that was my fucking jam. I don't, if you think that's a bad game, whatever, it probably is. I haven't played it in a couple of years, but to me, that was like the coolest goddamn thing ever, legitimately. And so like my hopes for this movie were like, I want Shadow to hold a gun and shoot it. And I also want Shadow to ride a motorcycle. And he did both of those at the same fucking time, Peter.
Peak.
And it was nice. Even though it was, it wasn't like a gun, it was like a fucking, laser
Sure, right.
gun for the ratings or whatever. But like, and even like the first, like the very first fight scene that he's involved in, he was doing like the way he was fighting was the exact same way he was fighting in like the intro to Shadow the Hedgehog, like the animated intro for that game. And in that game, you never like legitimately go through combat in that fashion. Like it's only in that intro where that happens, and it's sort of like an older video game thing. Like you see less of it now, where they have like in the trailers or in the promotional material or whatever, they have a character doing a certain thing in a certain way, and that's not at all how the game actually is. Like it was a bit different way long ago in like the 80s or 90s, where you have like the box arts depicting the dudes, and then the gameplay is like the shittiest. Like the box art's like the coolest, like most rawest, goes hard type of image ever, and then the gameplay is just a bunch of like piece of shit, like 4 pixel dude going moving around at 4 miles per hour type of thing, and like the Shadow the Hedgehog video game is sort of like that, because in the intro he's like teleporting around and beating the shit out of dudes like that. And in the games you don't really do that, but in the movie, like the very first thing he fucking does is exactly like that. And I was like, oh shit, I think I'm in for someone here a little bit. And there's like a couple of other moments and stuff like that that are again nice if you know the games and know the stories, because they're adapting sort of like a couple things at once in this. It's sort of like a Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 and Shadow the Hedgehog a little bit, in this weird like sort of conglomerate, while also doing its own things. It features a lot of Jim Carrey because he plays two Robotniks, and I'm like mostly fine with that. Like all my problems with the first couple of movies was like I didn't care about any of the human stuff.
Right, the humans.
Like in the second movie, there's like this wedding that happens or whatever. It's like get me out of here.
This is not what I'm watching for.
And like again, by the third one, we're leading more and more into that. Okay, it's the animated characters running around and doing shit, which I prefer a lot more, because they're adding more of them into the thing. Like now we have Shadow in the mix. And hopefully, eventually, with Sonic, because they're gonna make more of these. I think 4 is already confirmed. Like, hopefully, they get Silver the Hedgehog. In the the fucking. Because when I was young, I would watch the Sonic 2006 cutscenes, and I was like, "This is the coolest game ever. It looks so badass and awesome." And then I watched Game Grumps play, and I'm like, "Oh, wait a minute, it sucks. That's damn."
It's like,
And the
damn,
story is
all you do
awful,
run?
probably also.
Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, but watching the cutscenes as like I don't know, I was like 8, maybe, or something, or 10, someone around there. I was like, this is badass and awesome. They're like going through time, and there's like all these interconnecting stories of like these 3 protagonists. They could do something with that, I think, honestly, for the next one. But I like with each fucking movie though that I've seen, I'm like, as I'm watching it, I'm thinking of like how I would do it better type of thing. Like I'm like, I would get rid of this. I would have the story be about this thing instead, like this aspect of whatever Sonic is about. And I definitely felt that with this one too. It's like it's not perfect at all. Like it's the fucking jokes in this are so dumb. Like I'm sure you've heard of like the Konichi what thing that was in the trailers, where Sonic the Hedgehog in full genius mode just combines the Japanese phrase konnichiwa, which means hello, and the English word what. And he puts it into one word because they're in Japan, and he speaks English mostly in this film, at least, or in this version of the film, I guess.
Yeah.
So that was a joke attempt there. There was also this part where he had nunchucks and he was wielding them around like pretending to be a badass, and then he accidentally hits himself with them, and it's like, Jesus Christ, that joke is 40 years old.
That's so funny.
It's legitimately,
It's so funny.
It's like double my fucking age. That joke has been around for. Like, please stop that. And like even beyond the jokes, the writing is not there at all. Like I wouldn't even still call this a good movie, even though I enjoyed particular aspects of it. Like as a person who like recognizes certain, it wasn't on like the Mario movie like level where it's just reference after Easter egg after Easter egg, and like the plot is just fucking non-existent, and it's just those stupid license songs, and that like this. By the third Sonic movie, I feel like it's not afraid to like embrace sort of what Sonic is. Like there is some licensed music in there still, but they do like in like the final like fucking epic moment, they're using a song from the game. I'm like, oh my god, this is what these stupid video game adaptations have needed for so long. Like just give us the fucking sauce.
The
Like
theme
these
songs,
these songs that we
yeah,
really enjoy and appreciate existing. Like it,
like they have
yeah,
nostalgic power. Like
exactly. And
I don't know why you have to go to
it took
the least common denominator and go with, you know,
yeah,
rock
whatever.
top 50,
Yeah.
whatever.
Which there are some of those in this. And I don't think the music choices are in this as bad as like other ones, for sure. But yeah, it like at this point it took so long to finally fucking get here, you know. And I'm glad that it exists, and I'm glad it is the way it is. Though I can't help but feel that it could be better. It is funny seeing on social media though people freak out over like how like particular moments of it are so good somehow. Like it's like the first time that people are like watching a movie almost. Like they're like, oh my god, this character did this thing because of this thing. It's so genius and so well written. It's like
It's like,
I
wow,
don't
baby's
know.
first narrative.
Yeah,
Baby's first narrative experience.
legitimately. But like if you do enjoy like any of those aspects, like power to you. I think you know there are parts of it that are nice, and I do like a decent amount of this film. I just sort of wish that it could be more, and I'm hoping that by the fourth, and maybe you know if they go that far, the fifth or however many of these they just fall more and more into that of like where we can cater to a wide audience, but also sort of mostly do like the fan shit and just like I don't know, improve the writing somehow, get rid of the Konichi What's, get rid of the nunchuck, the bullshit, you know, like do your own thing. I
Let's do
feel like
something better.
yeah. So yeah, it was nice though watching it in theaters.
On my end, I had enough of bad movies. You know,
You had enough, Ed period.
I was thirsting. My soul was hungry for good substantive movies and like good filmmaking. And luckily, during December, one of the theaters near me was playing some, you know, peak cinema. Luca Guadagnino's
Oh,
newest movie called Queer. His second movie this year.
yeah, which is
And I
kind of nuts.
It's unusual for like a director like him, I guess, who is more, you know,
Of his
celebrated.
quality.
It's like a bit like more art house, more like more tasteful, like a good director. And after this movie, he's without a doubt one of my favorites of like currently working. Like he is one of the best currently working.
Legitimately.
And I was surprised how much I liked Queer. It's a strange movie, very strange. Not at all like Challengers, which I mean shows this depth. It's not even like incredibly similar with any of his other films. Like he has, you know, similar themes throughout all of his movies. He depicts intimacy and longing and desire in such a unique and like individualist way. Like, you know, you're watching a Guadagnino film when you're like watching like just two people hanging out with like the amount of tension they
Hanging
have
out in
between them.
quotes as
Yeah,
friends,
exactly.
as quotes.
Yes, yes. And this one is no different, but
Yeah.
it's much stranger, much more trippy and disjointed. It's based off of a novel from William S. Burroughs, who is a very strange kind of figure in literature. He wrote Naked Lunch, which I know was adapted by Cronenberg.
Yeah,
I still
movie's
want to watch
awesome.
that. But his writing is very strange and kind of cold and like disjointed, as I said. And Luca does a great job of kind of like capturing that feeling. I believe he did work with the same writer, yeah, Justin Kuritsky's that from Challengers, and so they adapted this screenplay, and it's a really cool movie. Something that like really sits with you, like well after the movie was done, with just like the imagery. It's a very quiet movie. There's not a lot of dialogue, which is really interesting because I've read the book after, and you get a lot more internal perspectives in the book that are completely, you know, shown visually in the movie, and it adds a lot, but it adds to the ambiguity And there's obviously kind of things you can read into. There's one particular scene of like drug use, like a heroin trip, that is such an interesting take on what like you often see in movies as like a kind of bombastic and colorful and like vibrant and kaleidoscopic like trip. And they take such an interesting way in this movie where it's just straight one shot. Daniel Craig doing his thing. He's great in this movie. Fantastic performances throughout. And it's just the camera just sits and lets you soak up the image and everything that, you know, what you think the character is feeling. And there's a ton of those kind of very cold, austere, observatory shots that I think really fits in this kind of movie where the themes of loneliness and longing and being apart, but wanting to be, you know, sharing another person's skin and being so close and intimate as to be one. It's a really cool movie. I would definitely strongly recommend. I don't think it's as good as Challengers, but Luca, keep doing your thing, baby. He's crushing it. I think he won 2024 for me. He was the best director.
Yeah. I mean, with two
think.
like good ass movies in 1 year, it's kind of hard to beat that.
No, super impressive.
Yeah, that one's on my watch list. I definitely want to check that out.
Yeah.
And the people at home should do it as well.
Indeed. I would give it an 8 out of 10.
Damn.
Really, really good.
Yeah, that's nice. I also saw this one called Life Itself, specifically Life Itself 2014. The 2018 one is like some dumb romantic comedy. Bogus. I don't care. It's Life Itself is a documentary thing about the man and the myth, famous reviewer of films, Roger Ebert. And it's got a cool structure to it where it's simultaneously like this adaptation thing of his autobiography, which was also called Life Itself, and also just providing like documentary footage of like interviews with himself and various other people that like, you know, knew him or still know him at the time of filming, I guess. Because I guess he passed away in 2013, and the movie came out the year after, which they, you know, sort of know that he was on the sort of end of his lifetime, because he suffered through a particular type of cancer, which is mentioned in the thing, so it's not a spoiler. It's, you know, they show it within the first like also 5 minutes, I think, also. But yeah, and like, you know, the name Roger Ebert, like you hear about it if you are at all in the movie like realm of the internet, like, oh, he thinks this movie is this rating, like, why do I care, you know, type of thing. And this documentary does like a pretty good job of like providing context to like, okay, like why was he so valued as a person with an opinion, you know, because everyone has opinions. It's just that he had a particular way of like describing it through writing. And he also eventually did this like talk show thing with this other movie reviewer man named Gene Siskel. And the two of them, they formed like on television in the 70s, I think, where it's just this TV show of them talking about movies together and reviewing them. And it's like the very first, like, you know, I hate to compare them to us, because it's like, you know, we're more
it's
trying
the same
to do,
idea,
we're more,
yeah.
They're a little bit more professional than us or whatever.
A little more studio.
Yeah, totally. And like, you know, but like to me, like, that's like the, you know, furthest reaches like the pinnacle, the initial phase of what eventually is now like the YouTube realm of people reviewing films and like sitting down and like talking about them. Like, this is sort of like the OG super successor to all of those things, and it's interesting to see in that, because they do show some of the footage from those things in this, and like they sort of explain how that show sort of evolved over time, and they were involved in that for like maybe 20 years or something, from like, or at least maybe more than that, maybe closer to like 30 or something.
Wow.
I'm not sure. But but yeah, like that aspect of it is cool. Like so if you even like value like the like looking at things in that way, like how did we get from here to there, not in that order, from there to here, type of thing. And like yeah, I would definitely recommend this documentary, Life Itself. Again, not to be confused with that rom-com thing, which I accidentally watched like the start of that, and then like I was like super confused for like 5 minutes because it was narrated by Samuel L. Jackson. I was like, okay, this is kind of different for a
that's an
documentary. I
interesting
figured
choice.
it was like showing some like it was going to be some sort of acted out sort of sketch thing that like depicts him in a certain way, and then we go to more documentary stuff, and that never happened. So I was like, oops, wrong. Life Itself.
Close.
Yeah.
Similar concepts, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah, I only watched the first 5 minutes of that. It seemed not very great. Of the 2018 one. Not to place too much emphasis on that. Check out the 2014 one, the about Roger Ebert. It's pretty cool, I'd say.
Yeah, he's an interesting figure in film and film review because, like, I obviously know the name.
Yeah.
But I was always curious as to like why do I know the name? He pops up everywhere. He has like a lot of notable reviews, and his music or his movie review site obviously is fairly prestigious. But like I haven't done any research myself as
No,
to
yeah, I haven't either.
who he was.
Kind of
And
check
so,
this out. This provides like in 2 hours like a decent like okay, well yeah, here's who he was with that. You haven't
why he became
dive much further. Yeah.
Interesting.
Good context.
I will have to check it out. As I continued my streak of watching good movies, I checked out one of my, longtime favorite directors, Richard Linklater, and checked out one of his earlier movies, The Scanner Darkly. Kind of famously or like infamously completely rotoscoped. It's a very interesting looking movie. And it's an adaptation of a Philip K. Dick short story or novel that I want to read myself. But it's a very strange kind of story about drugs and undercover cops and deception and like what choice and consequence. It's a cool movie. The rotoscope seems a bit off-putting at the very beginning, but it is used really well and serves the story really well. It's a super creative decision, and I'm absolutely blown away that this movie came to be. Period. Like, it's a stacked cast. You got Keanu Reeves, Robert Downey Jr., Woody Harrelson, Winona Ryder. It's just like an incredible amount of talent went into this. For what is like, I don't know, seemingly unknown director. Like at this point, he had already made like School of Rock and like the Before trilogy.
Okay, yeah.
And Dazed and Confused obviously was, I guess, his like.
He's established by that point.
He's definitely established, and people want to work with him.
Yeah.
But I'm surprised at how strange and how experimental this movie is, especially compared with the rest of his kind of filmography. I've watched a lot of them now, and this is definitely one that kind of sticks out, and in a good way, I think. I like the movie. I think it was a little hard to get super emotionally attached, which I wanted to, because the narrative and the overall, like the plot and the themes are all really evocative and very like meaty, and there's a lot to kind of read into and analyze here. Really makes me want to read the book, just because like there are some passages of dialogue or kind of writing that you can tell are lifted pretty directly from the book, and it's excellent stuff. So definitely something I want to, definitely another movie that just like kind of sits with you. It's a lot to like explore, a lot of really cool themes, and all wrapped up in like a strange kaleidoscopic trippy package that I think is definitely worth the watch.
Yeah, Yeah, that's cool. That one is in my watch list also. Now we're finally, I feel like, hitting things where it's like you've seen but I haven't type of thing.
Yes,
Like,
yeah.
because I like a year ago I would like look at your wish like future things to watch and also the things that like you have watched by that point. I would be like I've seen all of those
All of these.
across both of them. But now you're
I'm finally
yeah.
catching up. Finally catching
He's
up.
been going at it.
Slowly but surely.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I want to see that one also. I've seen most of his stuff, and
Yeah.
I don't think there's been a single one that I've disliked from him. There was that Waking Life that I had sort of mixed feelings about.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
it does a similar like weird like animation style thing, which was probably the like best and in my eyes most noteworthy thing of that one. And yeah,
Just really cool creative decisions.
yeah, that is
And
cool.
obviously he loves doing those kind of things with like
Mm-hmm.
following an actor through however many years or whatever.
Yeah.
I heard he's doing one with who is it? Paul Mescal, I think was the name that I recognized, and a couple other actors, where they're gonna do a movie for like 16 years. They're gonna film a movie for
Not
16
again.
years. I'm like, damn. Okay, I heard you like Boyhood. How about we do Manhood? I don't know, but it'll
see
be
whatever
an
that is.
interesting thing. Yeah.
I mean, he could do whatever he wants now. I guess you know.
He can. He's
He's made
good
enough
director.
good shit. I don't. I wasn't the biggest fan of Boyhood. You know, if he wants to make Boyhood,
That is
2,
one
be
that
my
I
guest.
still haven't watched. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough one to sit through because it's very long
Mm-hmm.
and it's like it's weird because you sort of see it slowly. In my eyes, you sort of see it slowly like fall apart, like over the course of it. It's really interesting though, and it's
As a decision to follow.
totally. But like,
It's just it's an
I
incredible
respect it.
gamble.
I really respect
Yeah,
the movie.
yeah. No one else is doing that. No one. I like.
Yeah.
It was surprising when Boyhood was announced and it got funded, but I think he's established enough that now he can have fun and just do these kind of weird experiments that no one else will
Yeah,
do.
why not?
And I love him for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of epic directors who like to post bangers only, there's this dude Michael Bay, and I've seen 13 films by him, and I
Damn.
on a range of like absolutely despise, kill me right now if I'm caught watching this shit again, to like this is kind of mid. Like that's where all of his movies fall into for me, except for this most recent one, which is the sole film from him that I actually enjoy and think is good. That being The Rock from 1996. And it's actually a decent film. It's before he sort of gets all of that like what he's known for, like what he was memed about 10 years ago. People don't really meme about him and the explosions or whatever anymore, because I think people don't really care about him as much as they did like 10 years ago when those first Transformers movies were coming out. And yeah, this like it feels much more genuine and much more like an actual fully realized film, and I actually enjoy the story of it and the characters in a fucking Michael Bay movie. Like to me that's kind of insane, and like because of that the action was so much more like enhanced, you know, when there was action happening, and there certainly was in this movie, because the like premise, which I really enjoy, is like there's this dude Ed Harris is playing this like sort of U.S. Army general commander dude, and he like he goes and takes over Alcatraz, which by this point is just a tourist attraction. It's not an active prison. And he takes it over, and he threatens the United States, like, I'm going to release this poison gas bomb thing on the population if you don't do this thing. And so Nick Cage is this FBI dude who works like with the chemicals or something. And he's like a chemicals expert, and he's tasked with going there and sort of diffusing whatever like nuclear weird shit they got going on there, because it is like this weird like supernatural like magical gas. I don't even know what it is. It's like it fucks you up though. It fucks you up.
Joker gas, baby. Yeah.
Yeah.
Essentially.
And he's teaming up with our favorite Sean Connery of James Bond stardom, and this like cool character. He's like this escapee, like this old prisoner who was at Alcatraz, so he's sort of an expert of the facility, and he's sort of going there and joining on this expedition to go in there and like it's essentially like a sort of a stealth mission type of thing, but of course, action happens and it's nice. And the I like the entire setting of it, and like all of the action set pieces I think are quite nice. The top review on Letterboxd talks about how it like is very video gamey, and it's like got fire traps and sewer levels, and I completely agree with that, and like in the best way possible, because like the fucking, for whatever reason, like the sewer levels is just one of those silly video game things that just exists, and some people really hate them. I haven't really noticed them too much until recently. I've been watching whatever random people have been saying it, and like that's a thing that certainly people do, and there is literally, like, I know exactly what fire trap that review is talking about, because I definitely felt that while watching it. It's like, this bullshit is just set up here for the fucking for the part of the story where they have to get through some random thing. It's like there's legitimately no reason for it to exist in the form that it does, and it does remind you of a video game, because for one of the things that I might talk about later, there are some things where like the design of it makes less sense, and it's like, okay, well, who actually like in universe, in world built this thing here, and like for what purpose? Because it only exists just to screw you up or like test you
in this specific
as a player.
circumstance.
Yeah, exactly. And it's sort of funny to think about it. And an example of it exists here, and not a video game, in a movie. And
it's that same kind of trope slash narrative obstacle.
Yeah, but I'm not like shitting on it. I'm totally here for it in this.
It's
form.
Obviously successful, and like. I mean, tropes are tropes for a reason.
Yeah.
They're
not always bad
and somewhat evocative. Like if they're handled well, and most tropes can be handled well, it just takes some good direction.
Yeah,
or some creativity. Anything.
Speaking of tropes, there's the way Michael Bay displays women on the big screen, and there's like more movies of his that are much worse than The Rock, but The Rock still isn't like perfect in these things, which I guess, I don't know, is my biggest complaint, even though like the female characters, there's only 2 of them really, and they're fairly minor, so like most of the scenes are just like action stealth shit, drama, and it's overall it is a good time, like, and I legitimately cannot believe that I'm saying this after watching like how many fucking movies, 12 from him, and then now, or 10 from him, and now the 11th one is like, I like this, like that's crazy to me.
I would probably agree. I watched The Rock years ago now, and I remember enjoying it. But now that you're speaking on like all the plot stuff, like I'm gonna be honest, nice. I don't remember any of it. Oh, yeah. I don't like none of this movie stuck out to me, and because like over the course of I don't know 5 years or so, the movie has completely slipped my my mind, and my neurons have just kind of purged it from its systems. But I do remember like the vibes and how gritty Alcatraz or The Rock is filmed. Just like I do remember the sewer systems and like all of like the dark and gritty kind of shots, and it is evocative. I agree. It's probably like one of the few Michael Bay movies that I actually enjoyed. Because I sure as hell wasn't any of the Transformers.
No, not the Transformers, not Bad Boys, whatever random shit that he's made. None of them come even close to this. Like the only one that I thought was like somewhat decent was Armageddon, and Armageddon is like it gives you absolutely zero time to breathe. Like there's always there's almost not a single part of the movie where a noise is not happening, like either through a person talking or some like random sound effect. It gives you absolutely zero time to think. And like again, what I appreciate about The Rock is like it is sort of like that sometimes. It's not just like nonstop random shit. There's like cooldowns. There's like random times where there's like you could breathe a little bit is what I'm saying.
And that's useful when you're watching a movie. Like not every movie has to be high octane energy for 90 minutes straight. Like that is exhausting.
Armageddon was more than it was. How long is Armageddon? Let me find this shit, because it was like that for legitimately the entire time. I think it is. I think it's longer than that. I think it's like
151. Holy, that is a long movie.
And it's nonstop. Wow. It's fucking
well
stop
over
with
2
Armageddon.
Hours, 2.5 hours.
You should watch it, by the way.
It's
It's non-fucking
Oh,
style.
it wasn't on my watch list,
Put
but
that shit
I've
in.
definitely seen that.
Yeah.
And
Oh, really?
like it mentioned. So I have meant to watch it.
Yeah. That one's his second best. It has more faults than The Rock, of course, but like it's far from the worst that he's ever created or has been a part of.
Which
And
is not saying
I don't think
much.
I don't think he's going to like make even something as good as that in the future. Because his most
Yeah.
recent thing was Ambulance, which came out
Right. Yeah.
2 years ago or a year ago, which I haven't seen, but I have zero hope for that. So yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I wouldn't put Michael Bay as one of my favorite directors. That's for damn sure.
No, probably not.
Certainly a cultural figurehead.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And his work with Transformers.
Yeah,
Like
billions
it was cultural
of trillions
and,
of
like,
dollars.
it became the zeitgeist,
Mm-hmm.
and it's impressive how influential Michael Bay has been. Does that mean he makes good movies? I won't say that. You will not don't put me on the record saying that. But
Don't
I will
write it
say
down.
He makes important movies. Yeah. That's
He
what I'll
makes
say.
influential things,
Influential
sort of.
movies. That's for damn
or
sure.
at least he used to. He hasn't made something like that in like 5 years at least, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's all I got for
But-
The Rock, though. Yeah.
Continuing our streak of good movies, figure we might want to talk about Anora.
Ooh, because I saw that one recently.
Yes,
also,
I just saw that.
yeah, I saw like a
Sean Baker,
last week or something. Yeah,
fantastic director.
yeah. We mentioned him a few
yeah.
episodes ago with
Red Rocket.
Red Rocket,
Yeah.
which was
Yeah.
nice. And this one I think
and-
is his best, or at least from what I've seen from him, it's my
Yeah,
favorite.
it's hard for me because I like a lot of his movies,
Yeah.
and I like them very similarly. I think Florida Project still
Yeah,
ekes it
that's-
out for me.
That's close. Yeah. I like this
but
one maybe slightly.
This one is fantastic and
Mm-hmm.
very. It's different than the rest of his other ones. This one feels more mainstream, and
I agree.
obviously, I like this movie a lot, and I don't think mainstream is I'm not saying that in a bad way, but the way he has kind of created the structure of this movie is much more digestible and less strange and kind of I don't know. His other movies with Red Rocket and the Florida Project and Tangerine, where they just kind of
Yeah.
follow these characters
Yeah.
basically through their daily lives
Yeah. Or like a
without
vibe
much
thing.
of
Like
yeah,
a, like a
it's
mood
not very
piece, like Vin Diesel's Los Bandoleros, like a
yeah.
like a sort of
As
one of
I've
those.
heard. Yeah, because there's not really a narrative through line
Mm-hmm.
in any of those movies. There's obviously kind of like, oh, these characters
There are
want
arcs and,
this.
like, things that
there
happen,
are
but yeah, it's not like-
goals and stuff. But with Anora, it's much more of a fairy tale. It's much more of a classic kind of story,
Which is
that
intentional.
yes, and it works very well here. It's one of I think it is the funniest movie I watched all 2024. I was
Funnier than
dying
Kindness, which
laughing.
I also
yes.
saw that recently, which was
Yeah.
a funny little thing from The Man.
funny and and a very strange and
Yeah.
weird way.
In a weird way.
Yorgos does his humor in a way that no one else does.
It's very typical.
With Anora, this gets really slapstick and like super
Sort of, yeah.
ridiculous and funny. And there's this one scene where there is a home invasion scene that could be depicted
Essentially, yeah.
many different ways, especially in a movie like this with this subject matter. But instead, it's played off for laughs, and it works really well. I thought it was hilarious, and it helps kind of maintain that energy that the first kind of, I'd say, third of the movie builds up, where we have a young sex worker who is kind of marries into this Russian oligarch family, and is basically awestruck with the glamour and the glitz of the rich lifestyle that she has not had. And it's kind of all shown in a very like bright and glamorous perspective. The movie does a good job of kind of showing why she would want this and why she had fun doing it. Like like Sean Baker is not really a director who's makes these movies to point the camera and like say, look at these people, look at these like prostitutes and porn stars and
like point like
the
look down
low
at them.
down
Right.
and like
He's not doing
just
anything.
like watch them and like isn't this crazy? It's not like he's not using them. He's simply like showing their stories. And I think he's such a good director. I really love all of these movies, and Anora is just like the next step. Really impressive that he was able to take this kind of mainstream step and find all this success. Mikey Madison, obviously fantastic. So is all of the Russian actors, and I know that that one kind of Turkish actor, Karen Koragulian, the Armenian one that has shown up with a bunch of Sean's movies.
Oh, yeah.
Always love seeing that.
I liked his character the best. He was the funniest to me.
Yeah,
like,
Toros.
That was my. 'Cause it has a really unique structure where it is sort of divided, like up quite a bit. Where you have that. I don't know if you could even or should call it Act 1, where it's like that. She's doing the sex work stuff. She meets the dude, and she sort of enters his life thing. And then like the second main part of the movie is they're sort of scrambling to find the dude, because like, I mean, just all these things that I don't necessarily want to spoil, I guess. But there's sort of like a chase / search for a character that this Karen Karagulian character, his character leads. And to me, that was my favorite part of the movie because it was like that mix of like just funny and like out there and like they're just causing mayhem. And it to me, that was the most sort of entertaining aspect of the movie. Obviously, the parts that surround it, the beginning and the end, I think, are really good as well. And like the ending is just like
incredible. Yeah.
It's
very potent and impactful. It's definitely because the ending is fantastic.
Yeah. We're trying not to
it all
spoil
builds
it.
to that. It all builds to that.
Yeah.
It's just something that you have this high energy film that is kind of, as we were talking about, it's fairly high octane for a long time. Like it doesn't often kind of like let you breathe, whether that be because of the chase that we were talking about or that kind of like just glitz and glamour of the high roller lifestyle that she finds herself in. There's not a lot of time to open up and get to see that vulnerable side of our main character, Annie Anora. And a lot of I've seen some reviews kind of harshing the movie for that, where it's like we don't get a lot of personal exploration of our main character, just because of she's like very quickly pulled up into this life.
It's a lot of inferring stuff on the surface because it's like
exactly.
the love that she feels for him is something that like a lot of characters think, oh, she only is interested in him for the money or whatever, and like through inferring stuff we could conclude that she maybe does to a certain extent care more about him than like she maybe leads on, or so it seems. It sort of seemed to me like initially she sort of wasn't that way, and then eventually she sort of like fell
but that's
into
the
that.
beauty of subtext and acting is that like the people who are complaining that we didn't get enough direct exploration of what she's thinking at every moment in time, instead you can use the filmmaking and the acting to look at the character, the situation she's in, understand where she's come from, and understand what like she desires. Like that opening sequence of her in the club where she's just kind of hustling a bunch of men to try and get clients essentially. And that is very simple. It was like maybe a 10-minute scene, but it
just establishes like here's
such
what
a
her
good
life
job
is
of
like.
exactly.
Life is like,
It's a fantastic establishing scene that really, that is the character that you know at the beginning. And so where this movie takes her in every kind of weird sort of strange odyssey that it does,
a modern odyssey.
you get to kind of understand where she came from, what these circumstances would likely do to her, and then eventually once we get to the end and you get to see that kind of facade that she's been holding up for the longest time, break. It's cathartic and it's depressing. It's
Yeah.
sad. It's the end of a fairy tale, and
Yeah, it's quite
kind
the
of a
wind down.
cold opening to what the rest of the world is.
Yeah.
And something that again leaves you when you when you watch this movie, it sticks with you.
Yeah,
It's
another
something that
bang
like
of the, yeah.
yeah, just strong endings. It helps a lot with kind of. I feel like obviously people want a good movie ending, but a great movie ending really helps to solidify
Yeah.
and like tie together an entire like cinematic experience. Obviously, it's the ending, but yeah, I think it's underrated in how important it is for a movie. Like you can have such a great concept and narrative experience for the majority of a movie, but if you drop the ball at the end, then that's what you're left with. But these have been some strong endings from movies that I've been watching, and Nora it's no exception.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I feel like the exact same way, man. It's again like one of the best from the year. I haven't seen that like nearly as many as you from 2024.
Yeah,
But out of the ones
I've
that I've
watched a
seen,
lot
it's
of
pretty
it.
up there.
2024 it's been a great year for movies,
Yeah.
I think, and yeah, Nora is certainly one of them.
Yeah. That's all the ones that I got. That Honora was the last one on my little list
Oh, okay.
that I had. So take it away.
I have a couple more I want to discuss, and one of those is Nosferatu.
Ooh,
Another
yeah, I want to see this one.
highly
bad, man.
celebrated film from a highly celebrated director. I love Robert Eggers. I think
He's awesome.
it's very easy to love or hate him. He has a
Yeah.
very specific style of direction and filmmaking. It's very gritty and granular and specific. But I think that serves well with his kind of very historical and like gritty period pieces. And I think Nosferatu is one of my favorites of the year. I think
Nice.
it was fantastic. It's one of my favorites from him, period. I don't know if I like it quite as much as Lighthouse, but Nosferatu, it is such a good movie. Like coming from Anora into this, I was so happy. I was so happy. I got to see this in theaters, and it was a great experience. I think this is one of his prettiest movies, which is crazy to say because all his movies
Yeah.
have been incredibly beautiful. Lighthouse is also up there, but this one you get to see much more of his. You get to see how he uses budget, and obviously we saw The Northman, how he uses budget there, and I think you can tell what he learned while making that movie on that budget and brought it into Nosferatu in some really interesting ways, where he gets like some great kind of one takes that you don't really feel the weight of, where you're just kind of drawn into these long scenes where some of them are, 30 seconds to minute long takes, and it's something that you just feel the energy pulling you along without directly getting pulled out of it and being like, oh wow, this is a really cool one-shot scene that they must have done a ton of blocking for and a ton of planning. It's just something that it exists within the movie, which I really like. All of the acting, fantastic. Lily Rose Depp, I'm shocked at how great she was. She hasn't been in a ton of movies at this point, I feel like.
Right.
She obviously kind of had what was it? The one with The Weeknd. I can't remember what that show was on HBO.
Oh
something
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. I know
where
what you're
it was not widely celebrated,
The-
and a lot of people
The
shit on
Idol.
it. Yeah, The Idol. That's it.
that
But
bang.
she is fantastic in this movie. Really kind of pulling from what's her name? Isabel from the original, or from Herzog's Nosferatu.
Not
and
Isabel Huppert.
from Possession.
Oh, I know that person.
This
I
is
forget her.
very Lily Rose Depp's performance is very much kind of inspired by Isabelle Adjani's performance in Possession, and also her performance in Nosferatu the Vampire. And I think she does a great job with that kind of more physical style of acting where, in order to kind of express this possession that she's under, you get to see her, you know, act out in that very physical
Yeah.
and exotic and evocative way. She did great. So was Nicholas Hoult was great. Skarsgård, obviously, he's incredible. He's completely transformed as the Count Warlock. Just something that I could not tell it was him. I knew
Yeah.
during the movie. I didn't remember who the actor was, but I'm like, it was in the back of my mind. I'm like, isn't that supposed to be Bill Skarsgård? Like, it was completely unrecognizable.
Yeah, that's cool.
The score is great. The cinematography, obviously, strong throughout. I think it is just a really enjoyable take on a classic movie. It's my favorite Nosferatu that I've watched
Yeah.
by far. And I watched all of them this year somehow. I wasn't even doing it necessarily
Yeah.
in preparation for this movie.
Well, there was
but
that
I'm
Sardonic
glad I did.
Cast episode
Yeah.
where they reviewed some of them.
Yeah,
for that.
I did. I watched some of those
I did the same
after
thing.
I watched this one because
Oh, okay.
I like this one the most, and I don't think I'm out of my mind when I say that. I think he does such a good job of kind of translating a lot of the core elements of the story, where this movie doesn't feel super unique or incredibly changed, but he heightened every element that made the story good and took it to the next level, in my opinion. This is like a 9 out of 10 for me.
Yeah.
I loved every kind of choice that he made. It's so dramatic. Like, there's just an overwhelming kind of oeuvre to this movie where it's just like takes you up, and like you understand that you are not really meant to take this super seriously. Like, it's very played up for like theatrical dramatization. Like, it's just super like over the top and gothic and moody and all of it, but you are enjoying the experience of sitting in that, or at least I was. There's some like great takes at humor too. Willem Dafoe's character kind of brings a lot of levity that you kind of need in that kind of center arc of the movie, because the rest of it is just, like I said, dripping with imagery and gravitas and, oh, we're in the dark, in the dark with the death and the devil, and it's just like so over the top, but I love it, and
Yeah.
I think it really serves the movie, in my opinion. I don't think it insists upon itself. I think it is just celebrating this kind of filmmaking and kind of really jumping into the deep end with it and just wrestling it. Yeah, love it. 9 out of 10. Very, very pleased with this movie.
Yeah. That one is because I'm looking at the 2024 remaining things that I like haven't seen, and it's probably, I guess, my most anticipated
Yeah,
movie to watch
it's-
from
it's a great one.
that year.
I'm very glad that it was so fantastic, because
Yeah,
I did have high expectations of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then as 2024 came to a close, I had to check out one more movie, and that would be Gladiator 2 by Sir Ridley Scott.
Yep.
One of my favorite. No, I don't know if I can say he's one of my favorite directors.
Hold on that.
Like, I do love some of his movies.
Yeah.
I think Gladiator, the original, is absolutely fantastic. I think so is Blade Runner and Alien.
Yeah.
He is a very talented filmmaker. Thelma and Louise I also loved.
Which is surprising
And-
that he did that, I feel like.
Yeah, he has a lot of talent and a lot of like variety when it comes to his filmmaking. Like, he makes iconic movies and like cinematic experiences that are made to be experienced as a blockbuster, as something that like will stick with you. And he had that in Gladiator 1. And I'm sorry to say, but I think he lost it with Gladiator 2. I was not a big fan of this movie. I think it's serviceable as a blockbuster. I'd give it like a 5 out of 10. I think it was just middle of the road. I think the narrative was much weaker. Not to get into any spoilers, but this movie is not a direct sequel, but it is directly linked with the first one. It is standing on its shoulders, hands intertwined. Like, these are Gladiator 1 and Gladiator 2 now. And I think it serves it much, much worse for it. I don't like how indebted it was to the first movie, especially when you're just reminded of it all the time, and you're wishing you were watching a better movie. It's the same problem. It's the same problem.
Yeah, that's what I figured, like, with the marketing
Mm-hmm.
and like everything. Like, just because I haven't seen it yet, I don't even know if I will or anything. But it did give off that sort of vibe, feel of like this is probably going to be not so great, and it's going to make people go back and watch the original, because even on Letterboxd, like the most when that came out, like that was also within like the most
People
popular
just watching
of
the
like
first
this
one.
of like this week. It's that's the problem. That's the, I guess, maybe the biggest problem with these, that not everybody thinks about or recognizes, I guess.
Yep. I don't know quite the circumstances of how this movie was forced into the making, because I can't imagine.
Yeah, he was
Ridley
probably
Scott
approached
really
about it,
wanting
and
to make this.
and it's like,
exactly.
we will give you $500 trillion if
Yeah.
you do this for us. And he's like,
Yeah.
all right,
I guess.
let me flood the
and
Coliseum. Then
it's
I'm in.
It's a shame. It's a shame. I think like there are very rare cases where sequels work and are as good or better than the original.
Yeah.
One would be Blade Runner 2049, I would say, as a pretty direct and tangible upgrade over the original Blade Runner.
Yeah.
I was
think
hoping
most
something
people-
could happen.
Yeah. I think most people would probably agree with you on that.
Yeah,
I'm
I
super
think so.
torn because, like, to me, those two are so close. I think I slightly prefer the original.
I do like Blade Runner,
No, yeah.
but man, there's something about the 2049.
They're both awesome. Yeah.
And I like Gladiator 1, and I wish I liked Gladiator 2.
Yeah.
It's just, the narrative got very messy. The acting is serviceable for the most part. I think it's all good. But the rest of the plot and the writing is just incredibly by the books, really reaching for the emotional ties that you had with the first one, as opposed to trying to do anything new or anything good, really. It's just very reliant on nostalgia for all the worst reasons.
Yeah.
Not a big fan of this movie, unfortunately, and a bit of a sour way to end 2024. But after having so many good movies with Anora and Nosferatu, I find that was the ending to 2024 to me.
Sure.
And I ended very well. I was happy. I was fed. I was all of that.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, because
that takes us.
But I was just gonna say, like, he's a director that I respect, but I feel like in the past, like, however many years or whatever, he hasn't like really made anything that outstandingly
really
great.
hitting.
Like, honestly,
nope. Like
for a while, he's been on sort of a losing streak. Like, he did that Napoleon one, which I still haven't seen. I do want to check that one out, but
I still have to watch that.
heard mixed things of that. Like, if I sort by date.
Yeah, he did
Bangers,
Hasaguchi,
and then
Napoleon, Last Duel. Last Duel was okay. Last Duel was pretty good, actually.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one. But House of Gucci, I didn't like that much.
Yeah, I still haven't watched that, or Napoleon.
Or The Martian. I think most people like this one, maybe. I was trying to wait on it until I like read the book, which has never happened for like a billion years. But
The Martian was good.
Yeah.
Martian is like
I
that
like this
classic Ridley Scott kind of movie.
Yeah.
I would say The Last Duel is also that kind of classic Ridley Scott.
Yeah, it seems like he alternates on like good, middle, bad, like type of track record,
really
which
don't
is interesting
understand.
because usually it's just like, okay, they have a couple good things early on, and then it's just stupid shit after stupid shit.
Yeah.
But he like is sort of jumping around in like the quality, which is interesting.
He's a very particular film director, and I mean, has enough under his belt to solidify him as one of the greats and one of the most influential.
Totally. I mean, just Alien and Blade Runner alone, and the first
if you just
like
have
those three like under your belt, like
I think you're immediately locked into the culture.
Set.
Very impressive, but unfortunately, I can't say the same about his most recent movies. But that takes us to the end of our movies in 2024, essentially.
Yeah.
Have you been watching any TV in the meantime?
Yes, sir. I got 2 entries here. Do you have any?
I don't. I haven't been watching many
Yeah.
TV.
Yeah, nice. Good to stay away from those stupid things. But I did end up finishing Lost. Specifically, I ended up finishing it at your place.
Right.
And
Yes.
something interesting happened where on the last episode, there's a thing that happens, and there's because you guys at the place, you like sometimes play songs or like music on like the speakers or whatever that sort of play throughout the whole thing. And there was like an interesting particular song that I won't say what it was, but it was playing at like the very end of the last episode of the show, and it was like this really weirdly like odd but like well fitted also sort of thing. Like it was surprising, it, like almost in like a meta way of like, okay, like this song somehow that my friend is randomly
Right
playing
now, it's
is
like,
aligning
really?
with like
Yeah.
this episode that I'm watching of the show. And that aspect to it was quite interesting.
Oddly relevant
Yeah.
to what you're watching. Yeah.
But Lost as a show, overall, super enjoy it. The drama is never ending. It's every episode is entertaining, basically. Like there's not a single like dull moment of it. It gets more and more convoluted as each thing goes. Like I appreciate each season having its own like sort of like main like thing going on with it. And it does feel like a series that evolves over the course of it. Whether it's natural or not is maybe up for debate. Like whether it's like, you know, fully realize like this feels like the direction that it's going. Either way, I enjoy where it goes, and to a certain extent where it ends. Like it's an ending where the more you think about it, the worse it is, which isn't really a good thing. But I also at the same time don't think that it is that terrible. Like there are plenty of things like I thought sort of when I was midway through it or even somewhat early on, like I figured they're bringing up all these random things and a lot of them I feel like are going to get unanswered. And that's true. That's true by the end of it. And I expected that and I accept that also. Like, because it's like, how do you even, like, as writers, even get together and like, okay, we need to resolve this thing and this thing and this thing and, you know, whatever other shit. Like, it's hard not for it to fall apart. And I don't think it, like, completely does. I think they're sort of pulling out stuff that they placed there and, like, the other parts of, like, the block tower, like, sort of falling apart on top of it. And they sort of, like, catch some of them. And, like, the final tower that they end up with isn't, like, a completely, like, broken down thing. But, like, some of the pieces have fallen off and, like, some of them are, like, still tilted. And they're still sort of, like, grabbing onto it by, like, the very end of it. But overall, it's a show that, like, I don't hate really any particular part about it. I think there are lower moments that it has, particularly by the end. And, like, you know, it does get convoluted at times to the point where, like, if you look at it in a certain way, it can be a bit silly in some ways, I think. But, like, just as a show, if you want to be entertained, if you want drama, and if you want, like, weird, like, supernatural things occurring also in, like, sort of fun, conceptual ways, that isn't, like, super confusing, but, like, again, the more you think about it, the worse it sort of is, type of thing. But if you do, like, are interested in, like, any, even, like, pillar of that, like, I would recommend this show, I think, because it is overall a good time. Yeah, I just think it's a noteworthy little piece of television there. I say little, it's 6 seasons on average, 20 some
Extremely
20
influential.
episodes,
Yeah.
40 minutes
Very
per
much.
episode. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little long, I guess. It took me over a month, maybe almost 2 months, a month and a half. I have it written down somewhere, but I ain't gonna look for that shit. So yeah, I think that's pretty much I have to say about it. I would recommend it overall, most definitely.
It's definitely something that I have to watch
Yeah.
at this point. I think these kind of shows, like what they're called mystery box shows or whatever, where it's that kind of genre of you're dropped into
Yeah.
a narrative, there's a mystery to unravel, and each season usually takes place in, like, you uncover more about the world.
That's totally
and
what this is.
It
That's
raises
totally
even
what
more
this is.
questions.
Yeah.
And so I feel like those kind of shows really, they rely obviously on having a great hook and a great mystery, which Lost is known for having like one of the best. But it's also, I feel like these kind of shows are reliant on hopefully being able to stick the landing.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting in this case where even if it doesn't stick the landing, the rest of the show is, as you say, good enough to warrant a watch.
Yeah, like it still like holds it together. Like even if it doesn't perfectly stick its landing, you could say.
If it did stick the landing, it would have like, could this have gone down as like one of your favorite shows of all time?
As like Sopranos, Breaking Bad, whatever, like type of thing. Like if the ending was more well defined and like a couple things like that, I have other random nitpicks with certain things of like, why is this character some of the times the characters are a little bit inconsistently written. From time to time I have like random notes about like, why is this person doing this thing at this time, or like how did they know this thing at this moment? This doesn't make sense. Like there are random flaws episode to episode in just like the writing of it, but like overall I'd still say it's like worth checking out. It is a good time. Most certainly.
All right.
So that's one of my shows. The other one is not a live action thing, if you could believe it. There's a thing called anime that I sometimes dabble in.
Every once in a while.
Jinx. But there's within anime, there is there's all sorts of genres or whatever in anime. There's slice of life. You got like random shonen action stuff. The absolute pinnacle, the peak of anime genres, and all anime fans know this, but just for the casuals out there who are listening, the pinnacle of these genres is isekai, of course. Which is where some random virgin loser protagonist, Asian male straight, goes from
high
schooler goes from his boring ass Baka existence on planet Earth and gets transported to a fantasy realm where every singular person loves him and wants to suck him off and give him $1 billion.
He has some sort of power, some sort of unique power that is individualized.
And they're overpowered,
And yes, it's the best power.
It's all what's the term, like wishful, like fantasy wish. What's
wish
the term?
Fulfillment.
Wish fulfillment type shit of like
power fantasy.
Power fantasy. They want to tailor to like
unique
young audiences of lonely Japanese, and by extension American, and also European, like whoever fucking
any anime consuming audience,
straight male gays, like shit like that. And the one I watched was The Rising of the Shield Hero, and I guess you could say it sort of falls into that. Do you know anything about this one? Have you read it?
It's for certainly isekai. I have not read or watched it, but I know
you're aware of its
the series. Specifically, I know much about the second season.
I forget. I don't know if I watched the second season of it technically. I watched 25 episodes of it. I don't know if that's technically season 1 or both season 1 and 2 in like one thing. It was just on Netflix. And so I just watched. I think it's just season 1.
I think it's just season 1.
Yeah. In that case, I have more to look forward to on the way because I have not checked out whatever's beyond that, I guess. And I enjoy the premise of it, honestly, because it's like, it's not just one dude who comes from the real world into this fictional one. There's 4 of them in total. And the 4 of them sort of have to act as these heroes to this other world, and each of these heroes, as they it's only like brought up I think maybe twice throughout the whole like thing that I watched, but they're all from like different versions of Japan, like they're from like different alternate realities of Japan, and they're like brought into this world, which is interesting. And they're tasked with like they have to fight off waves of monsters or whatever that are invading to defend the kingdoms. And for some reason he gets put into the position of the shield hero. There's like heroes for a couple of different weapons or whatever, and he's the shield one. And for whatever reason in their world, nobody likes the shield hero to like an extremely strong degree, which it feels it's genuinely so over the top, like how much the characters desire to screw him over. Like it mostly just boils down to one character who's sort of to blame for the whole thing. but like by extension, like like legitimately the entire fucking world is against his existence like so quickly. And like there are particular aspects of it that I enjoy, but it's so overwhelmingly much. Like I feel like it's just the author had like is sort of like a quiet weirdo, and they had like a bad rumor or something about them spread, and like nobody believed them about it, and they're just sort of taking it out in writing, which is something that authors do. You know, that's not. That is what they do. That's one of their main
Yes,
things.
it's not uncommon.
Especially with these anime wish fulfillment shits. And to me, that's sort of what it feels like. It's a super over the top. Like, how the fuck are like people like coming to these random conclusions about his character, about his like concluding that he's like this terrible person when he's been in here for like 5 minutes or whatever. Those aspects of it are really silly, but like I again, like, don't hate the premise of that, like the base idea of that sort of thing, because again, it's typically these things are wish fulfillment. They get incarnated into the world or whatever, and then from there, it's like they get sucked off for 10 trillion hours or
they
however
get powered
long
up.
the stupid thing is.
Yeah, whatever they want.
And in this, it's like, oh, he kind of gets screwed over, and he has to sort of slowly over time prove himself to people of like, hey, I'm a decent dude, guys, or something. And so, like, a thing that forms from this is that they are not allowed to fight together because of some weird in-reason universe of, like, if the weapons are too close to each other for too long, they get fucked up or something. So they have to, like, form separate parties and, like, get stronger throughout the world. It's essentially like a video game thing where there's, like, a leveling system and other, like, random shit. And so, like... they each have to like form their own party and go do random adventure RPG stuff on their own separately, and then come together when like the invasion stuff is happening. Which again, I enjoy in theory the premise of that. And like since he gets so screwed over from the beginning, he essentially has like no one who will willingly fight alongside him. So the only like thing he could turn to is slavery, which exists in universe, and like. Again, like slavery isekai, that's like it's a pairing that exists, and it's
it's not uncommon. Yeah,
because it's a weird wish fulfillment.
It's a fantasy world.
I will
right?
buy a
so
person, and they will be my sex slave, but it's not really that. Like it's disguised as that essentially, so that like the readers can like, I don't know, infer. It'd be like if I were this person, I would do things slightly different. I'd like whatever weird shit. Like they wouldn't put that in the forefront of what the story actually is, but it's more of like getting the like I don't know, like getting the readers
the gears
fucking
turning.
thing.
The
gears turning.
You give them the possibility.
But again, like
in the world building.
In this one, it makes sense because it's legitimately the only path he could turn to. Like it's the only way he could go because no one else will work with him, and he has to fulfill this destiny thing somehow. Where again, it's like it's so bullshitty because it's like we have to work with this dude, but we're not going to help him. Like, what the fuck are you doing? You're just choosing to kill yourselves over not helping one of the 4 legendary dudes help defend you from these things. It's silly. And yeah, the slave he buys is like a dog girl, like she's like 10 or something, and then he buys her, and then he trains her to fight because he is the shield hero, and he has like super high defenses and like support capabilities, but he sucks at beating things up or whatever. So he needs somebody to do that. That's what he buys her for. And then like she like grows up in like there's like I don't know even know if it's a time skip. I think it might be literally like 2 days that takes place, and she's like all of a sudden way older looking. Like I don't know what happened, if it was legitimately a year or two, because again she's like this weird like half dog half human, which is like it's really just a girl with dog ears and a dog tail.
Of course, yes.
Like that's all it is.
And she has to be 10 years old.
I know. But when you dog ears, she's way older though. Yeah. Okay, guys.
No.
That's probably some way how they justify
it's 10 years in dog years, right? So it's like it's different.
Yeah, and it's a matter of like she's sort of I guess eventually has romantic feelings for him or something, and he's not like one of those so far. It might be an Oshinoko situation where it's like, okay, thank God he's not being weird right now.
At least,
but he might be eventually. Like I have no idea. I've only watched apparently season 1. And this thing goes on maybe for forever, for an ungodly amount of time.
They often do.
So yeah, it's like it pulls me back and forth a lot because there's certain ideas that I'm here for and that I'm into, and it just pulls random shit like bullshit. Like there's a part where he goes back to the slave owner dude and he's like given essentially like a gotcha sort of egg thing that'll turn into like any random sort of beast thing. So I'm like, oh, that's cool. He gets to have like a monster sort of party member thing, which happens in some video games, where it's like you have these human characters or humanoid in some ways, and then you just randomly get like an animal to like come beat shit up with you, and that's cool. So I'm like, oh, cool. Is gonna essentially do that, and that's sort of what happens, and it eventually becomes like this sort of like chocobo like creature, and he's get challenged to a race when he has one, and he like races and he wins or whatever, and then like he goes to bed, and then the next morning the fucking chocobo that he was racing on, like he wakes up and instead of the chocobo lying right next to him, it's like this naked little like 10-year-old girl also again. It's like, what the fuck are you doing? What the fuck are you doing, anime? So it's like she transforms between like this fat chocobo mode and then like a fucking lolly thing, like with little wings.
Yeah.
It's like, what the actual fuck
It's marketing,
are you
baby.
doing?
It's marketing.
What are you doing?
No.
It legitimately it pissed me off so much that I couldn't help but laugh. It was one of those like I cannot believe this is happening.
It's like I get fan service, but we're doing this.
Like
really?
I could not fucking believe it. It was unreal to me. So yeah, there's other random shit. I don't even know if it gets better as it goes along. There's like an equal amount of like bullshit and decent things that are happening. But yeah, I'd say that pretty much summarizes my feelings on it. I guess if there's a season 2, I have to check it out. I mean, I just have to. I didn't love it, if you couldn't tell. I thought it was okay, sort of, maybe a little bit overall.
As an isekai.
Oh, on the isekai, as an isekai, it's one of the better ones. 100%. Okay. Like, yeah, most isekai are complete trash. Like the biggest fucking dog shit genre is isekai.
It's easy to cater to the least common denominator, or the most common denominator. And just like have the worst, just like most by the books, by the numbers kind of story, and
it's like the most tropey genre.
It is just it's fantasy, obviously, and it serves.
It could be
fantasy. Anything. So a lot of people a lot of these isekais don't feel the need to provide
be
any
good
substance or do anything unique, and unfortunately, that leads to a very
they are super
subpar
samey
genre.
to like one another, and a lot of anime is in general, which is a wider problem with the industry, with how it works, with like how there's more shows being made with each year, sort of thing, and like it does oftentimes feel like I watch a show that like is newly comes out, and I'm like, this is I feel like I've seen this 8 trillion times already, in like just a slightly different coat of paint, like it's so almost unique. The exact shade that I've seen for the exact like same thing, just regurgitated again. And to a certain extent, that's what this is. I don't think it's completely utterly worthless though. I try to be as optimistic as I can be to these sorts of things, and I'm like, I am enjoying certain ideas displayed, but like when you're giving me bullshit like that, it's so hard to grow like attached to it in any way. But yeah, overall I'd say it's borders on okay to somewhat below that. So yeah, that's my Rising of the Shield Hero rant. Join me for season 2 when I watch that, I guess.
And
whatever that happens.
In the meantime, shall we discuss the video games that we've been playing?
Yes, sir. I have 4 of these. How many do you got?
I've got 3. So if you want to start us off.
You want me to keep talking after all that?
Hey.
I think people want to hear you. I think people are sick
all
of me.
All right.
People have been sick of me for 5 episodes now. They want to hear you, Peter.
I've been going on a bit of an indie game grind. Because I just finished up, obviously, Metaphor. And, after that and Dragon Age, I wanted quicker games. I couldn't, devote myself to another 100-hour or so experience. No. So I checked out our YouTuber Jacob Geller's end of the year list, as we talked about him last episode. 'Cause I feel like he has a good. He likes to pick out really interesting, unique indie games that I would never check out myself. And so when I heard him kind of celebrating the game 1000x resist or 1000 times resist, it sounded like a very interesting game to me. And I played through it, and I can say it was without a doubt the best narrative experience that I played through in 2024. If not necessarily one of the best games I played. It's essentially like a playable visual novel, where the narrative and the narrative structure is by far the most interesting aspect of it. It's a third person, technically controlled game, like RPG, I guess. But the amount of gameplay you're gonna have while you're controlling your character is very, lowest rung on the ladder, very by the books, not super interesting stuff. You're like zipping around from point A to point B, walking around from point A to point B, talking to people. That's about it. But the actual story and as I said, the narrative design and the narrative structure is incredibly interesting. There is a lot to do with different moments in time, where you play a main character called a Watcher, the Watcher, who is delving into the memories of the Allmother, who is essentially the original copy of what would then become a world full of clones. It's a really strange, very weird, trippy sci-fi, and the actual structure of the game helps that and explores it in really unique avenues where you get to play through memories. These memories can sometimes pop up in really interesting ways, where you'll be playing a level at a certain time, and then kind of elements of the past will begin to bleed into and infect what you're playing through at the present, and you can kind of see these ripples affect into the future with cycles of inaction and violence and hatred and love. It's a really interesting game, really impactful and potent in its storytelling and the themes that it gets across. Really ambitious, incredibly ambitious. This is made by an indie company of like 4 people and like maybe 2 others they kind of licensed out, but I cannot imagine how much work went into it, like just the concept and the writing. It's a really, really cool game, really unique experience that I don't want to spoil like at all. But essentially, the entire game does come down to the story. I would, I would caution against expecting a great game gameplay wise.
Sure.
It is a little boring. Like it's a little boring. It was hard for me to get into, honestly.
Okay.
There are 10 chapters, and once you get to chapter 5, that's when you will most likely be hooked. It could happen even earlier. But once you get to chapter 7, chapter 6 and 7 are like some of the best like moments in gaming I can remember in a long time. Like they're fantastic. They do really interesting things with the characters and, as I said, the timelines. It's just a really cool sci-fi that I have never played a game quite like this one. Definitely worth a playthrough. So provided that you kind of go into it expecting a visual novel and a really cool cinematic experience.
So what's even? I mean, visual novels are not known for their gameplay.
No,
but like the reason, like, why do you say that? Like it's bad, questionably, or like not not so great?
Just,
Do you just are you just like
it's
3D?
not super engaging.
You just move around.
Yes, you are a third
And just
person
interact with
character.
random dudes.
You get to interact with the world, which is a cool world. The
Hmm.
actual like the modeling and the art and the art design is all very cool. All of the locations that you get to experience are cool. It's just that for essentially like maybe like it's a I'd say 8 to 10 hour game.
Okay.
You are just walking around rooms for the most part.
Sure.
They definitely do break up the structure of the game and the missions that you get to play. Sometimes you're first person and you're kind of exploring an environment in order to find clues and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Other times you're just like walking from point A to point B to find clues or talk to people. It's just not the most engaging gameplay. There are some more interesting kind of like puzzle-based elements to it where you are like kind of zipping through the timeline. Like you can change,
Okay.
go back in time by a day, like forward in
Hmm.
time by like 50 years or whatever, and you
Interesting.
get to experience the same same location in two different timelines,
Yeah, that's cool.
which I like that trope. And in Dishonored 2, one of my favorite levels is like specifically designed around that design element. And that was definitely those were more enjoyable elements to this game, and I liked when I was doing that. But there's also the problem of there's a hub world that you engage with a lot, and it's very chaotic and messy and not very well designed. Like it's hard, it's easy to get lost in the hub world, and you have to like you don't have to go and like talk to each of the characters in the hub world, but like it does help to flesh out the rest of the world
Hmm.
if you go and talk and do like the extracurriculars. But it's a messy hub world that is not designed super well or super legibly. So I was often getting like lost trying to figure out where to get to the next person, or
Yeah.
like I can see
There's no like
there's
objective
no
marker.
map.
Yeah.
There are objective markers, but
Okay.
the compass is like really whack and does not really serve you.
Yeah.
There's a lot of quality of life elements that are missing from the game that I I mean it's obviously it's 4 people worked on this game or
Yeah.
so, like a team of under 10, and it's like
Yeah. Which is
to
crazy.
do as much ambitious stuff as they did with this game. The gameplay I'm more than willing to forgive because just how strong the rest of the game is. The soundtrack is also great. Really good music, and yeah, there's just absolutely fantastic and unseen moments of gameplay, not gameplay, of just like pure rich storytelling that that are like the peak that I've ever
That's
experienced in a
cool.
game. So I would highly recommend it.
Yeah. As a dude myself who has played some of the Trails games, I have absolutely zero problems walking into
Yeah.
buildings and talking to every random
No, I
person I
think that
see.
this is a game for you. Yeah, it's a incredibly rich
Yeah.
and thematic game that I think if you're willing to put up with even the
Hmm.
tiniest amount of jank, it's well worth your
Sure.
time.
Have you played many visual novels? I guess I should say
No,
played in
I
quotes.
have not. It's
Yeah.
definitely one of my less played
Sure.
game genres,
Hmm.
so it's something that I might have to check out
Yeah.
more in depth.
It's definitely a weird genre for gaming because it's like
Hmm.
some of them like go more into the actual gameplay of it than others. Like some of them are literally just like here is 400,000 dialogue text boxes that you just M1 click through the entire
Yeah,
thing pretty much.
yeah. This is
And then there's some
definitely
that like
not.
interweave other like it's like mostly visual novel and then sometimes you're doing some other thing randomly.
Yeah,
Like yeah.
yeah. This is definitely not a game I don't think anyone would qualify it as directly a visual novel.
Okay.
It is more of a third-person RPG, just in the structure of the game. But because of how much time and how much more focused the storytelling is, and how much kind of dialogue there is with characters and the characters it explores and studies,
Hmm.
I would say it's more
It emphasizes
it's
that
more of
further.
a spiritual,
Okay.
visual novel.
Hmm. I see. Yeah. I might have to keep an eye out for it because I did also watch that. I think Jacob Geller
Yeah,
video,
yeah.
which
It's a
maybe
pretty quick
foreshadows
one.
a future YouTube
Ah,
topic
yes,
that
yes,
I'll bring
indeed.
up. But yeah, it was a nice video. All right, yeah. So on my end, of course, I ended up finishing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, the
Mm-hmm.
second of the three Final fucking Fantasy
Fantasy
VII
Seven
remakes
remakes, yes.
out of these things, and I pretty much have similar takes to what I was saying last time when I was roughly halfway through it. Um, like, man, I just think of like theoretically, okay, if they just took these rather than separating these shits out into three separate things, you just condense this experience like a little bit, like cut down on the time. It's cool if it's
Mm-hmm.
longer than the original, like at least double the length, like between double and three times the length. So like somewhere between 80 to 120 hours, which seems like an insane amount. But this game alone took me like I think I spent maybe roughly 80 hours on it
Right.
or something close to it,
Yeah.
which is a decent amount. And like if you just take these three separate experiences and just put them into one thing, like I feel like genuinely you would have one of the greatest like modern experiences in gaming. Like you just
Yeah.
trim the fat and you put them into like one big thing because like something you miss like out on so much is just that, like the fact that this is all in one grandiose experience because that's sort of what
Hmm.
Final Fantasy VII original uh, was, and to a certain
It
extent
was
still
one
is.
game. One,
Yeah,
yeah, one
yeah, like yeah,
experience.
technically, whatever, three separate discs that you had to insert into
Right.
the whatever console you were doing because it was just that big at the time. And the physical copy I have has two discs, one for just to install the 200 whatever gigabyte thing, and then the second one to actually play the thing. It's like, what am I doing? I haven't done something like that in years, where it's like
Actually,
disc
yeah.
one, disc two to.
I thought we were past
I
that. I thought we weren't even
know, but
using discs anymore.
here we are, man. And like because something that like could be really cool in the modern landscape is you have the Midgar section, which is a little bit more linear, a little bit more like condensed, and it's like all right, point A, point B type shit, and then you get out of there, and then all of a sudden the game just absolutely transforms, and now it's like an open world thing or like an open zone type of thing, and like to be able to like have both of those like types of gameplay shits within the same experience would just I think legitimately be so cool, and it would reflect like the
Mm,
feelings of playing the original when it came out. Of like, oh shit, I just played the game for 10 hours, and now I get to explore the world. You know what I mean?
yeah.
You could like replicate that feeling in the modern day. I feel like if they were all in one like concise experience, amongst the other like the slightly smaller things from them being separate, like the you level up to fucking level 50 or whatever in the first remake, and now you're down to level 20 or something. You have less equipment than you had like carried over into the new game. And then something similar will happen in the third one. And then also in this, like they like two party members are introduced, and this sort of happened in the first game also, where in the first remake there was a character party member who joined you at the very end of the game, um, and they like joined you in such a way where you wouldn't like have control over them because that'd be sort of weird to just like all right, you're in the last stretch of the game and now we're introducing a new character and like here's how you play as them or whatever, when versus like every other character where you've had like pretty much the whole game to uh, experience and in theory master them. So rather than give you that, he's just gonna fight alongside you in battle. You don't give him commands or whatever. He just sort of does his own thing, but they're there because that's when they show up in the plot of the original game. And they sort of do something similar in Rebirth, where there's two party members who appear, and like again, if this was like all one thing, you wouldn't have to do this weird bullshit where they're like in your party but not really. Like they're going
Mm-hmm.
around with you, but they're like they have to like come up with some sort of weird excuses to like why they're not participating like actively in your like the stuff that you're doing. And for one of them, the way that they join you, like they like sort of bounce around the events, like the ordering of them. Like there's a certain point where you're supposed to go to this person's hometown, and that's where you sort of recruit them in. But instead, they sort of join your party a little bit before that. And they, in this game at all, like you don't even go to that location at all, which is completely backwards, because like by the point in the original this game ends, you would have already have had to gone there. And the game like does skip a few locations in that order, and I assume in the third one you're gonna go visit whatever remaining things. It's sort of weird in that structure where it's like, all right, here's this super elongated ass like location from the original, and now you're gonna be here for 5 hours instead of like 10 minutes or whatever. And like each of them taking so long, and there's a couple that are just like near the end just either skipped over entirely, and I believe we're gonna look at them in the next one, or some of them where it's even like, all right, you're here for like barely any time at all type of thing. Like the place like right before one of the dungeons near the end is like, I don't know, it's weird, and it's interesting the way they adapt like the ordering of like each of these events. So stuff like that surprised me, and like all the random new stuff they added in the story were things that kept me focused and engaged with it, and like they kept my curiosity, and like the payoffs for them weren't necessarily the greatest things ever. I guess I didn't really know what I expected with them doing like some weird like random new stuff, but it was a payoff, and I enjoyed the story overall for its, you know, whatever differences it might have. I'm cool with it existing and it doing its own thing. And yeah, just wish it was a shorter, more condensed, you know, thing.
Single experience.
Yeah. And like, because there's so much padding and random bullshit and, you know, whatever, which I went into enough last time. Yeah. But it's like still like, even after all my complaining about it for 50 minutes or whatever, it's still like one of my favorite like fucking gaming experiences of the past year, you know. It's it's in a weird spot. It's just, it has so many flaws, sort of trying to pull it down, but in like the way I see it, it's still sort of standing pretty tall, in my opinion. Yeah, like a game that I really love, and I'm looking forward to the next one. It's just I know I feel like I'm gonna feel the same goddamn things, because it's like if they're holding off these locations from this one, they're just gonna put them in that, and it's gonna be like, it's gonna have like similar issues, I feel like. But it's still looking forward to it, strangely, after all that.
They are good, and it's just something that leaves you wanting a different
less
experience.
Surprisingly.
Yeah, which it's not super common.
Yeah.
But I guess in this day and age, maybe it is a little more common.
Yeah, with how long games are getting, and also people complain about movies. Also, they don't want shit to be 2.5 hours, like, which a lot of the, you know, whatever recent stuff.
Or even like not just, you know, the length of something, but the desire to split things into sequels, split things into part 1, part 2, part 3. It's just like
this is absurd. Like, this should have never happened. Like one solid experience of the remake would have been so sick, like undeniable.
But the money is there.
So awesome, but it's so weird, and it took so goddamn long for them to even, you know, make this shit.
Yeah,
it's unreal, and like the environmental details are legitimately so awesome, and like the way they like modernize the look of some of the locations from the original, it's legitimately awesome. Like the architecture they put into like just like the way that the towns, especially there's the Cosmo Canyon location, and like the city in that is really awesome to look at, I think. So like
they are incredibly polished.
There's a lot of effort put into it, no doubt. Yeah. I just wish it could have been
maybe too much effort.
Too much effort.
Yeah.
That's how I feel about that, though.
Continuing my indie run, you know, not as much in my big studio bag as you, but another game that I had seen a bunch of people talk about this year and celebrating was Mouthwashing.
Oh, I've heard about
which is that kind of small, short horror game. It only took me one day to play. It's like 2 or 3 hours as an experience.
Yeah, that's short.
But it is really good. It's incredibly solid. as a horror story, it's pretty evocative, even with that kind of like really uh, low fidelity graphic and like art design. It serves the game, and again, the narrative structure to the game is super interesting. Where I don't want to spoil anything actually, because this is a really short kind of concise experience that I think everyone should play. Even if you're not really big on horror, it's not the scariest game, I'd say, so it's not something to worry about. But the narrative and the story that this game tells is very, very good, and really well demonstrated and explored in a video game, like as a video game. I think there's something about indie developers that they are able to explore concepts and themes in much more specific and well realized ways, just because it's like, oh, I have this idea for this game. I know this idea that I have has the sauce. I know how to translate that. I'm going to translate it. And if you have that core element, then you can flesh out the rest of the game. And you don't have to be beholden to a studio to add, oh, this mini-map, oh, these objectives, oh, you have to do this with these characters.
Literally
doing
Final
this.
Fantasy fucking 7 Rebirth. Because I understand what you mean. The indie shits, they feel more genuine compared to like the organized like Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth. It's like we need to. It needs to have this many blank things going on within it to do like a check mark for the player or whatever.
Yeah, they're just building an experience tailored to what the vision was.
Yeah,
like they don't feel the need to overstay the welcome. And this one is really cool. It's got a great kind of episodic structure to the story, almost, where like you are bouncing in between perspectives and in between timelines in a very non-linear fashion, but it obviously serves the horror elements and the more overarching themes of the game. It feels very cinematic, like both this and a thousand times resist. They feel almost, they remind me of like a Memento, kind of, where you get that really interesting structure to the story, and then you get to explore it and uncover kind of parts of the mystery in really satisfying ways. And with this, it's, like I said, 2 to 3 hours to play through the entire thing.
Yeah.
And it's very rewarding because there's enough substance to both the themes that it wants to explore, as well as the gameplay, and the kind of setting that you're in, and the characters are all great as well. No, really, really solid game. Very impressed with my foray into the wide world.
Damn, he's so
of
diverse.
Indie
He's so
games.
cultured.
Yeah. I feel like I don't.
Yeah.
I obviously play indie games, but these kind of even smaller indie games, like where it's a studio of like 5 people working on this really cool game that they had an idea for,
that is cool.
and they just release out into the world for the trial by fire, and it's working for a lot of people. I think it's an interesting time to get into games and game development, because obviously a lot of the AAA developers are not hiring. They're not
always
putting
cooking
effort
either.
into new IPs. It's often sequels and more by the books things.
It's sort of reflective of the movie industry to a certain extent.
It is. It's content in general, and it's, maybe we'll have a discussion about that at some point. But it's definitely something that has it's something we've been discussing throughout all of these videos that we've now made. Is something that there's something in the water, and everyone knows it. It's hard to really quantify or talk about, but it when you feel it. And it's nice to kind of go back and take a step back and engage with these smaller projects that have the passion and have the vision that you might be missing in more of your AAA experiences. So definitely recommend both of these games.
Yeah, I've heard of mouthwashing quite a bit. It was definitely one of the more like talked about, like even video games
Hmm.
in general. Like besides indie, like I feel like I heard a lot of discussions
Yeah,
surrounding this one.
I saw a ton of videos on YouTube
Hmm.
before I eventually checked it out. Just being like,
Dissecting the true meaning of
exactly.
or
It's
some
like,
rambles or
oh,
like
this game
that.
hates you. It's like, oh, how this game is grotesque.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's because obviously this game it's very evocative in its imagery, which
Hmm.
helps to kind of push it to a wider audience. And I'm glad it did. I'm glad it found such success because I think it's worth it.
Yeah, and again, to highlight you saying that it wasn't that scary is important because Peter is a big scaredy cat for people that don't know,
Yes,
and for me
I
also with
hate
video
horror
games.
games
Yeah, oh yeah,
specifically.
totally.
Horror games are different because
I
like
know
it
because
is
you're in
that
it and you're in control.
you're
And
locked
I
in.
feel
Yeah,
like
exactly.
super.
No, it's incredibly immersive in a different way.
Yeah.
Like with movies
With a
now,
film,
I
it's so
can
easy
get
for
more
me to
into
like,
it.
that's not
Yeah.
happening to me right now. I'm so good.
No,
I'm so
with video
floating easy.
games, it's like I'm
It's a
looking.
different level.
I have to control where I'm looking, and I know there's something behind me right
Yeah.
now, and I don't want to look because I know it's there. Yeah,
No,
but this
I
one,
super feel that. Yeah.
yeah, this is a much because it's a shorter experience, so you don't have
Right.
to, sit in that miasma and that anxiety that
For as long, nearly.
I do not like the feeling of. I know people love it,
Sure.
and it's incredibly, it's a very powerful feeling, which is why horror games are completely different than a horror movie. But
Yeah.
not a fan personally.
But this one is, and yeah, I sort of was hesitant on checking it out. I don't know if I should have or not, but I might
Hmm.
now just because you did.
Yeah, it's very short, so
Yeah.
I think it's worth it
That's
no
cool.
matter what, just because it's not a big investment, and the payoff is well worth it, in my opinion.
Yeah. Nice. To the opposite end of that, not indie at all.
Hmm.
There's this long-running franchise that I've been meaning to check out for some time, and I finally did, somewhat recently because for the Santa Claus he delivered to me the Metal Gear Solid whatever collection Volume 1, which is it was released 1 or 2 years ago, and it's just Volume 1 of it, and for some reason I don't think they've announced Volume 2, which would be implied to be released at some point. I mean, if you call it Volume 1,
You'd
then you would,
think,
in theory, there would be
yeah.
eventually different things. But I played the first entry within this sort of series of Metal Gear Solid. I decided to skip Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2, those like old ass like SNES things, because
I was about to get into this series myself.
Oh,
and
really?
I
You were
had
gonna
to go.
start there?
I
Yeah, I
did
have
the
to start from the
research on like,
beginning.
oh, where do you start from? And
Yeah.
there's the Reddit threads that are
Oh,
like,
yeah, they're
oh,
like, you have
if
to
you
play the
really want to be a
originals.
completionist, go
Yeah.
through the Metal Gear. Or
I
just
probably
start from
will
Metal
check those
Solid.
out at some point. I
Yeah.
don't know if I have the guts, the forte to
I think
go
most
through
people
and
say
actually beat them.
start from Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah,
1,
that's where
and
I
because
started.
it's like that is the vision.
They provide you with enough background
right.
information because
Yeah.
they like in the game's like even menus they have like a thing you could read in advance of like here's what happened in this game, here's what happened in this one, and then you're like caught up. So like you like know all the plot shit. And honestly, like I feel like it's not better, but like they provide enough information for you, and like by the time they are mentioning stuff from like the past games, because they do, they don't just like hide away from the fact that like they don't exist. Like they very much are important, relevant things that are happening within the story of Metal Gear Solid. But when they do happen, it's not like, oh fuck, I didn't play that, I don't know what's going on, or like it doesn't make sense. Like they utilize them in good enough ways where like even if you didn't necessarily play those entries yourself, like you still like understand what is happening and like why it
And
is,
serves
and
as
why
context
characters
for
are
what's
behaving
happening
and like
now.
the ways
Yeah.
that they are.
That's good.
And yeah, I haven't played a single game from the series. I haven't played a single Kojima game. I've only just heard about the man, the myth, and I gotta say this game really impressed me, man. Like it's cool. It's simultaneously cool and annoying though, because it's got those old video game quirks. Like
Right,
it's it's like a stealth action game where the stealth is like impressive and like cool, and then the action is like what the fuck is happening? Like it's such bullshit.
Just gonna punch.
It's some of the fucking
Yep.
action sequences like really bothered me, and like some of the boss fights or even like some of the non-boss fights, just like sections where okay you have to shoot the gun for 5 minutes, or if you fuck up once, you go back to
Yeah,
to the
yeah,
beginning
yep,
or
yep.
whatever.
Hmm.
But it's also sort of in a way a puzzle game too, where it's like like you have to really like think and like figure out like how the fuck do I sort of get out of this sort of weird situation. But honestly, I'd say like the number one thing that this game has going for it is the dialogue, like the character interaction. Strangely enough, in like this game where it's focused on this dude Snake who's going on this solo stealth mission, and
Hmm.
he's just like kind of just going on his own. But strangely enough, from that, like the coolest part about it is the character interaction, like because most of the communication in game like doesn't necessarily happen from like face to face, like he's exchanging words with someone else. Like every once in a while that happens, but most of the like verbal exchange that's occurring is through the codec thing, where he like communicates with various characters
Hmm.
over like essentially like a radio type of thing.
A Zoom call.
Yeah,
Hmm.
which I was aware of that through various memes, and then like Super Smash Bros.
It's
Brawl,
iconic.
there's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
a
yeah.
thing in that with it, which I understand Snake's moveset a lot more after playing this video game. That's always a
Hmm.
benefit from playing a dude like from Smash. It's like I understand their moveset. I know where this move comes from now.
True.
I know
No,
where
no, that's
Sora
true. Yeah, yeah.
switches between these three
Yep,
magic
yep,
shits. He
yep,
does that in game. Oh my god.
yep, yep.
I know where he's got these triple lock on attacks. That's one of the moves. I forget what it is. I never really used it though, because I'm
It's
not
all
very good
lore.
at those. Yeah.
Smash
Anyways.
is all lore accurate.
Yeah, and the voice acting is really nice, and the writing I think is really nice also. It's a very unique game, and I sort of want to, because you plan on playing these eventually, so I don't want
I
to
do,
spoil.
yeah.
I don't want to spoil
No,
some of the
don't,
ways that
'cause
like
I do mean to
even the
play
plot.
through.
I wouldn't spoil the plot, but like
Mhm.
there's particular ways like you have to figure out how to do shit, and it is not like typical in any way for like how most video games would have you solve them. It's very
Interesting.
strange and out there. You might know some of them from like
I
various
do, yes.
game
Very
things.
classic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I've definitely watched those videos, and I think by the time I played this one, I've completely forgot about them, and like
wonder how it
some of them I
works
had to look
now
up,
on
and it was
PC.
like yeah. But like the collection on PS5, which I have, it does have ways of like, because some of them are pretty specific to like the original
console that
way
was
in
on,
which you
yeah.
would play it. So
Right.
they have like on the modern systems, they do have ways of doing that, of imitating that sort of thing.
That's cool.
Yeah, and it is cool, and you know maybe we could spoil it at some point and go into that. 'Cause it's very noteworthy. in
big
the ways that it
series
does
to-
those. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
it's
is
a big series to
series.
deep dive on.
Yeah.
But it's probably they're very important and
Totally.
very influential.
Yeah,
obviously.
this is the only one so far that I've played. The collection has this one and then 2 and 3 or whatever, along with the first 2 Metal Gears, which I'll probably eventually check out somewhat soon.
Eventually.
But yeah, I'll soon play. Probably by next time, I'll probably play maybe I don't know the second one, or soon.
They're
Somewhat
shorter
soon.
games, which
they
is
are
nice,
short. Like
yeah.
this one took maybe a little bit over 10 hours, maybe like 15 or so for me, because
Yeah.
I died a lot. I died a lot
quick, yeah.
because it was tough.
Less than a
sometimes.
week. Mhm.
Yeah, exactly. For a professional gamers like us,
And the
that's under a week
professional-
locked in, easy.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it took me like 5 or 6 days. So yeah, exactly. That's all I got to say about that.
That
though.
is the
It was
nice
cool.
thing about That's
Oh,
the
yeah.
nice thing about these indie games that I've been playing.
Yeah, yeah.
Is
They're
like,
nice and short and digestible.
and yeah, because after mouth washing, I kind of want to take a step back and go, back to the roots, back to one of the more classic indie games that have come out, and play through Undertale.
Oh, no way.
Yes, sir.
No
Yes.
shot. Undertale.
Another fabled game.
Did you play this in 2024 or 2025?
20? No, I just finished it today. Well,
2025.
finished it.
First
So,
time Undertale.
Yes, first
Wow.
time player. I know.
Wow.
And this is a game that obviously is incredibly influential.
Super
It
influential.
has so much.
Did you ever play
cultural
Earthbound, or
cachet.
you're just jumping into
No,
this?
I'm just jumping into this. So, and obviously, there's a lot of games and history that come with Undertale.
Yeah.
Things that I'm now very interested in checking out. I literally just finished Undertale, and I say finished as in I beat.
Which route did you
the
do?
Original path. I did no death. I did pure pacifist.
Okay.
But I just beat I don't know if these are spoilers, but I beat the flower guy. So I know there's more to do after credits roll that I am interested in checking out.
Yeah, and there's
Like
different
true
routes
ending or
and
whatever.
shit like that.
Yeah, and like it is cool. Kind of, there's not as much to do with all of those like individual routes as like with a say near automata or whatever. Where this is more like the actions you have consequence, which is nice. Love that in a game. And it's interesting to see Undertale because like obviously everyone knows the name, everyone knows Sans, like the imagery is so iconic.
Yeah.
But I feel like I don't know, very few people talk about the actual gameplay, or I don't see much. I just it purely exists in the cultural lexicon for me as like, oh, look at that imagery, that is Undertale or
Papyrus,
whatever.
spaghetti,
Yeah.
random shit like that.
Exactly. But it's a fun game. Also pretty short. I've got it done in like a couple of days. But the gameplay is fun and engaging. I was not expecting it to essentially be most of the combat is just bullet storm or like bullet hell.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Which is a cool take, especially because there's also like the social like RPG element to it, but it seems very much just like a product of its influences, and obviously these influences are worn on its sleeve and very proudly, and I think it serves it well, just because it is sort of playing up to the stereotypes and the tropes of many of these games, but also having fun breaking it and doing interesting things with it, kind of breaking the fourth wall, being meta with it, and doing it in fun and interesting ways. It does feel very much like I don't know how to say it, but the fandom surrounding this game kind of goes before the game itself,
Totally.
and like
Yeah.
you understand the kind of game that would likely breed these kind of fans and stands, and for better or for worse. So I was very curious to get into the game myself and like just figure out where it all came from. And at the end of the day, it's a solidly made game. Indie project made by one guy,
It pretty much, just one dude.
and
whole thing.
and it's super impressive. It's not doing anything necessarily groundbreaking, but it is subverting tropes and kind of doing interesting things with familiar gameplay mechanics in a really cool way. So
Wow.
yeah,
That's
happy I checked it
amazing.
out.
2025, first time
I
playing
know.
Undertale. That's unreal. Yeah. It's never too late, people.
It's never too late.
I've never played the game myself. I don't know
Right? Yeah.
if I ever will. I might, because it's sort of a meme with my brothers. They both love it. And they, because he's still doing them sort of. There's like Deltarune.
Yeah, the Delta
chapter,
which
whatever
now I'm
is
interested in
soon
checking
coming
out.
out.
Like,
Yeah.
they're fun games, and I'm glad I was able to finally check it out. Just because, like, as we've already said, it insists upon itself almost to the point where like the fandom insists upon it
Yeah,
for
totally.
the game itself, and it's just like, well, I need to get to the roots.
Super
Where did this
obnoxious.
game come from?
Yeah.
What is this game? What does it play like? What are the gameplay elements?
Yeah.
Because it's really just the imagery and the
silly dialogue.
silly dialogue and the reputation that it has that most people know about,
Right.
and not actually what the game is.
Yeah.
So
Because that's what we do here on Jupiter. We get to the bottom of it. We go
get
out
to
there
the
and discover it for ourselves.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and yeah, the fan base is like a super huge part of that experience for this one. I've played a little bit of Earthbound, which this game is very heavily inspired upon. Like it draws so many things from like the
Like
just
the main characters,
yeah, the
like,
RPG in general
from
to
the-
like
the
silent protagonist thing, and the just the dialogue and like the goofy, sometimes lighthearted, sometimes dark sort of
Yep.
nature of the whole thing. I played a little bit of Earthbound. I really love Mother 3, which is Earthbound 2 essentially.
Right.
Earthbound is Mother 2 in Japan, and Mother 3 is the Japanese only sequel to it, or Japan only. And I love that game. That game is one of my favorites. And it's still would be in sort of the same, a similar style Earthbound would be. So I think I would maybe probably enjoy it if I gave it a try. I don't know. I'm still super hesitant too, though. I feel like
just because of the predisposition
yeah, I don't know.
and like the reputation
Like-
it has. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to get into the current year, so it's good that you are being the one to dive into it first. This
I think
year.
it's worth it. It's a
Yeah.
it's a short enough game,
Yeah.
and the actual gameplay is very engaging. You know, it's very immediate. Like you're not spending a lot of time with excess fluff or whatever. It's, you know, an indie project, so the fat is already trimmed. You get basically a very well realized vision from the get-go, and it's much more satisfying in that way. Like, obviously, I have a lot of love for like these wide open worlds that we've been getting in a lot of AAA games.
Sure.
But I'm also really liking kind of stepping back from that right now and just like engaging myself in these really well, fully realized worlds that, you know, I don't need to know 1,000,001 things about the history of this world or the map or the countries that are involved or why this event is taking place here, when I just have a great narrative experience fully laid out and fully realized.
Yeah,
So,
nice.
very
Yeah.
happy with
I would have never expected that you would be.
I
checking
know,
this
pulling out
now, and
Undertale.
it's cool, though.
right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I'm putting in the work to go through
Anyone can.
these
All of our viewers
shitty
can.
movie franchises
Hey.
and putting in the work to go through,
Yeah, exactly.
you know, other classic games that I probably will, you know, Metal Gear,
Yeah, there you go.
or I do have to go back and finish all the Final Fantasies.
Oh no.
I've only
Did you
played
start?
the
Did you
first
start? Did you
two.
start and stop?
I stopped
a bunch
after
of them?
two.
Okay.
I stopped after
For the
two.
earlier ones, yeah.
Yeah.
I
and
feel like
just have
those
not-
ones, like when a game's that old and like just so bullshitty, it's like,
Yeah.
why bother? Type of thing. Other than the fact that like I did it, you know. You can
I know,
say-
exactly.
You
It
can
is
walk around and
just
say
for the
that. I defeated
completionist in
Final
me.
Fantasy.
That's
you,
the
like, get a little
only
patch
reason,
to,
are you
like,
kidding me?
it pinned to your shirt or something.
There was no
I beat
reason for
Final
me to play
Fantasy.
through all of the Fire Emblem, you know,
Yeah.
1, 2.
There's probably more
Gaiden,
value in that
1,
than
yeah.
the Final Fantasy ones, I feel like. Because some of those old Fire Emblems seem cool, even though, again, I haven't checked them out. I'm waiting for the Genealogy remake, is what I'm waiting for. That
So,
shit,
aren't we
shit
all?
they need to
Aren't
ship
we
that
all?
stuff out. What are
They-
they doing? They're just
They
sitting on it.
do.
So they've have
they-
they
yeah.
already finished it? Or they are making it still? I don't know what the
I mean,
deal is.
I heard whispers of it when Three
Yeah.
Houses came out.
Yeah, it's
And like even before that, it's
Yeah.
like, oh, I don't know what they're releasing, a new game or a remake.
Yeah, that's the thing.
And then Three Houses came out, and then when Engage comes along,
Mm-hmm.
no, it was when the the
Warriors?
offshoot Warriors
Yeah.
came out. Then we were like, oh, is it gonna be? What's gonna be announced? Is it gonna be
Yeah.
the Genealogy remake, or is it gonna be Warriors? And we
Yeah.
get Warriors.
There
and
was
then
that Fire Emblem
same
Direct
thing
that
for
showed off
Engage.
literally everything except Genealogy. The fucking Heroes, Warriors, the other mainline one
For
at
the
the time, I
past
guess, was Three
5
Houses.
years, more than 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the past like 10 years. Damn. But it'll happen eventually.
I'm praying. I want to play that thing, but I don't want to fuck around with the old ass,
I know.
old game bogus of whatever
Yeah.
random stuff.
But, hey,
it's cool that
hopefully they
Eden
don't
does.
feel the need to split it up into 3 different games.
Oh, you have to
And
split up the
follow
time skip
run
into
it
2
a
different
million
games.
things. Yep.
You could carry over your save data for like the pairings or something.
We could have like really new, interesting
Oh,
side
God.
games and side quests and characters that
It doubles
can't
the
do
amount of
anything because- yeah. Oh God.
Oh God, I don't know. Intelligent systems would never. They wouldn't fuck around.
I don't
They're
think
not
they would.
Square. They're not
No.
Square Enix.
No. They've already got, a gotcha game with Nintendo that makes them enough money.
They're making it
I
up.
don't think they
Yeah,
need.
they don't
yeah.
need the. All right, but yeah, for one of these, I only played this game for a day, but there was Zelda Echoes of Wisdom on the Switch that I've been wanting to check out since it was sort of released. And I like my 2D Zeldas. I like Link's Awakening quite a bit. I like Link Between Worlds. And this one's sort of a bit different from them because it's there's very few Zelda games where you actually play as Zelda. It's that weird misleading title for many years where people would mistake Link for Zelda. There's like to bring up Michael Bay again. It's like those memes that are like so old.
part of the culture.
They're like
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
yeah, it's a bit gone now. But yeah, so you play as her, and she plays it a bit differently from Link, because Link would just like the combat of Zelda games is quite weird, because it's especially the 2D ones are just kind of like, all right, swing your sword, like button mash, swing your sword a bunch or whatever, and the enemies will be knocked out and like avoid their attacks. Like it's very simple, and I enjoy that about it. And this one is quite interesting because like the way that she even works is that she copies objects. You probably already know this, but just so for the people listening, she like her ability is she copies objects and then she just places them. So it's like there's you need a platform. You need to get yourself from one point of the map to another. Well, it's you summon a bunch of beds and then you jump on all of them and then you reach your way to like a cliff to like get on top of it or whatever. And if there's enemies right up in your face, what you do is like you summon other enemies to like fight them. And it's like it's like this weird kind of cool, but also sort of annoying and weird like combat thing where it's you summon a dude and you just kind of wait it and run around and like dodge their attacks while hopefully the dude you summoned attacks the enemy and kills them eventually. It's a bit weird.
A little roundabout. Yeah.
And again, I've only played this once. I haven't completely figured it out if there's like, whatever sort of strats to use, like against this enemy, you have to use this guy. And like, it's sort of like a game of like,
rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah, exactly. Like, like expanded rock, paper, scissors type of thing. Maybe to a certain extent it is. But yeah, I played a couple hours of it during my one session. It seems very simple, very like easy to get into for most people. And like the art style is one that I like quite a bit. It's basically the same as Link's Awakening remake, which I liked quite a bit. It does share a major problem with Link's Awakening remake thing, though, which is the frame rate. It gets quite laggy fairly often, especially like anytime there's like a bunch of shit on screen. Like I don't think I've ever seen more frame drops on a Switch game than my time with this one, which is sort of a letdown. There's the Switch 2, which is releasing somewhat soon, and maybe it'll ideally
I heard
run better on that, maybe a little bit slightly. The rumors are like it Switch 2 has the power of a PS4 or something like that. It's like everybody's freaking out about how much that sucks or something. As long as it could ideally in theory run like this at like a solid 60, then we would be good. I don't know if a PS4 could do that. Maybe run Link's Awakening DX or remake or this one at 60 FPS. That would be nice. If Switch 2 could do that. We'll see though, I guess. So that's like my number one complaint about it. I enjoyed my time with it. I plan on going back to it. I was sort of interrupted by it because I was planning on doing this slightly easier game and sort of bouncing back and forth between the slightly harder game that I was playing and that I still am playing. And I would like sort of alternate. And like on days where I don't want to fuck around with the hard one, I would just, do the Zelda Echoes of Wisdom for a little bit. And by that time I would like recharge and like want to get back to that. That was the plan at the very least from the beginning. But the second I sat down and I started playing this other one, I'm like, I want to get through this shit, man, because it's really nice. Yeah, it's really nice.
And that game is.
Yeah, it's a video game that I've played. I've beaten it twice already. This is the third time I'm coming at it, and it's Fire Emblem Engage, Peter. Oh shit!
It keeps you coming back.
It keeps me coming back, and it's super unusual for a video game to do this. It only released like a little bit over 2 years ago. Yeah. And I've come back to it twice now, like within that time. Like that's super unusual. Like I usually, for the games that I do replay, there's at least a couple of years in between them. But like I just got that itch recently. I'm like thinking of the game. I'm like thinking of like the build potential. I'm like I could do this thing. I could run this thing.
Like nothing else scratches that strategic gameplay quite like this, where you get to move around the map, get your unit building, then your rock paper scissors, and then all of the other vast amount of build potential that you have in this game.
In terms of like all of those aspects for a Fire Emblem game, this is the absolute strongest in that pillar, in combat, in that gameplay, in build potential, because the other games have like, okay, yeah, you could set up a unit so that they have like all this shit going on or whatever. But you have to like grind out their levels like using DLC or some bogus, and it's like, okay, after 40 hours of doing that, then you could have like the perfect unit or some shit. Which there's a lot less emphasis on the grinding in Engage, but like still, despite that, the build potential and like the actual combat like gameplay like I feel like is unmatched for at least the other Fire Emblem games that I've played, which I've played the most recent like 5 or 6 that have come out recently. I've like beaten all those, and then I've played a little bit of Sacred Stones, Shadow Dragon, and Blazing Sword. I haven't beaten any of those. I've just played like a small bit of it. I've replayed like fucking Layden's first half of Blazing Sword like twice.
Those
like,
ones all blend together to
Yeah.
some extent. The GBA ones especially, just because like they were all developed very
which makes
close
sense.
to each other with like the same hardware. So it's essentially the same game, different stories.
Yeah, and I intend to go back to those, but it's like so hard to when like this one is so
It's so fresh
so
and
solid.
vibrant.
Yeah, and it looks really nice. I think it's the best out of the 3D ones. Easily the best in terms of visuals, and like you go from 3 houses, which I mean, if you look at it now, it's pretty ugly. Like the 3D shits. I wasn't really bothered by it when playing it because I'm not playing Fire Emblem games for the like amazing epic visuals or whatever. I'm playing it for the gameplay really.
If
at
it's
the end of
coming
it
out
all.
on the Switch,
Yeah, it was one of the
only so much
earlier
you can
games on the
expect.
Switch, and now we're like sort of at the end of the Switch. And this game is such a visual improvement. I am doing combat animations off though, and like I'm skipping all the cutscenes.
You've seen it all.
The story, like I'm totally like
It's
as
for the gameplay.
Yeah, and like when I revisit games, I almost never do that. Still, I still will like
Yeah.
watch all the cutscenes just to like remind myself and get myself like into that thing.
Right.
But like,
But obviously you played this game.
yeah, I've
for
played
a
it
very different
twice.
reason.
I've watched a Let's Play on it. Like I know the story, and I know I don't give a shit. Like I don't think anything within a year is like from me back then to now is like gonna be changing that. So I'm completely cool with skipping the cutscenes for this one. Like that's not why I'm here. I'm here for like all the other shit.
Are you playing on the hardest difficulty?
Oh yeah,
now?
I'm on maddening. Yeah.
Yep,
Which is the first
yep.
time I'm like doing a Fire
The
Emblem game
challenge
on the
run essentially.
Yeah. Because I've tried Lunatic on Awakening, which is the biggest fucking bullshit.
It's not
Peter.
fun.
It
No.
sucks. It's so dumb and it's so bullshitty. And in this, I'm actually, not to jinx myself, I'm having a relatively easy go about things.
Okay.
Like certain chapters are tougher than others, but for this run, I am using the DLC, which the DLC like makes things a lot easier, but it's also like the specific DLC maps are quite challenging. Like the biggest challenge that's coming from the maddening run is actually those maps, like the Divine Paralogs and the Fel Xenologue, which are 2 different things. There's so many like there's a lot to this game, honestly.
Yeah.
And I enjoy every like aspect of it because the DLC emblems you get are quite strong and they help you in the game a lot. But like those fucking maps, they take so long to like actually get them, and like the challenge is there, and then by the time you get them and then you go back to like the like actual like story maps, you're sort of a little bit ahead of the curve than when you're supposed to be. So doing the DLC definitely puts you at an advantage in the main story shits. They still challenge you with the DLC things, which is what I'm sort of currently going through. I'm trying to beat the Fel Xenologue, which is this weird sort of interesting like alternate universe thing. Like, it's like 7 chapters long and has its own story, which I'm also skipping because like whatever. And yeah, I in theory I will revisit this game at least 2 times, so that by that point I utilize every character in like a team of mine essentially. And by next time I will do maddening again, in theory, without the DLC. So I'll like beat it without the extra help of whatever. And yeah,
Do you
I just think
normally
like
play-
yeah, what?
Do you normally play on like the hardest difficulty?
No.
If it's
This is the first time
opportune?
I'm doing it for a
Really?
Fire Emblem
Okay.
game. Yeah, I usually start off with normal, which is essentially easy. In Japan, it's easy mode or something, or at least that's what the Teleus games. One of them was like when it translated over.
Yes. Yep.
I usually start with normal, and then a lot of them I've replayed and have done it on hard, and I've been cool with that. Like once I know the game and like sort of what it's doing, because the first time I played Engage, I was terrible at it. I was like trying to use everybody. I like wasn't using the sync skill functionality mechanic at all. I wasn't even forging weapons, I don't think. Like I wasn't doing most of the shit. And replaying it on hard was a pretty good, like a really great experience, honestly, because it made me appreciate the game like so much more. And I'm here now doing it, and I
maddening.
Yeah, there's very few games where I feel like I'm in control of things and I know what's happening and I like know how to like actually like do things, and I feel like sort of a master of it. Like again, I'm not beating Maddening right now without the DLC. Like once I do that, I'll feel like a true pro or whatever.
Now that is the thing about like once you play through a game on its hardest difficulty, it certainly
like
forces you to be like to gain the most familiarity with the game and the mechanics, and call it min-maxing, call it whatever you want, but like you know the ins and outs of the systems that are given to you, and you know how to therefore game the system and like get through circumstances that you never would have been able to if you hadn't, pushed yourself.
And that's why
I like going.
I'm also cool with difficulty options. Like a lot of people who like really like the Dark Souls things are like difficulty should not exist in video games, which like you're a fan of those, and also you are also a fan of like the difficulty options. Like you can be both. It doesn't have to be an exclusive
It's
thing.
satisfying, not having to beat your head against the wall and instead just like blowing through a level,
just having a nice time,
and like speedrunning. It's completely different. But they both, they scratch a certain itch, which I'm glad Fire Emblem Engage, I guess, is that game for you.
Yeah, it's nuts because like the first time I played it, I was like, this is decent, I guess.
Right.
And then going back to it, it's such a genuinely like it's just nice. Like this is why people should revisit things. Not everybody does this, but just to get like
a comfort game for you,
level of appreciation, for that sort of thing. And like, I'm not using like the most OP strategies. Like I'm aware of them, and I'm sort of trying to do something slightly different than them. For example, there's this character called Panette where her personal skill is like if she's damaged, she gets crit plus 10 or something. And it stacks well with this ability that Ike gives, which is Wrath, which is like the less HP you have, the more crit chance you have. So there's this build with her where it uses Wrath along with
her personal skill.
With that, and also fucking Vantage, which if an enemy attacks you when you're below a certain health threshold, then you attack them first. And it also is this one called Hold That, where it's like when you get damaged above a certain threshold, you go to 1 HP instead. Like you survive a lethal blow type of thing. So there's a strategy which utilizes all of those. And like the game is very player heavy phased, where like you need to knock out most of the dudes during your turn.
There's
because
not many tanks.
if they get a moment to like attack your dudes, they deal so much damage in this game, the enemies. Especially on Maddening, I guess. But like even on normal and hard mode, it's definitely a dangerous thing. Like even just like 1 or 2 of them could like kill a good chunk of your unit sometimes. And like it's a good way that like Panette combo is like a good like a very not easy because it's very like whatever resource intensive to like but it is reliable to like on the enemy phase just fuck up a bunch of dudes because they start attacking you and then you attack first, you crit them, deal a billion damage, and they're dead. It's a very like cheesy strat that I sort of utilized on hard mode with a different character, so it was slightly less OP. And then in this one, I am using her still, but I'm not using that like a combo sort of thing. So
no, I do like the Fire Emblem.
It's a cool build
variety because like I know exactly that build that you speak of, the Vantage Sweeper, where you
exists in the other games.
You toss Vantage on a unit, and then so long as you can have them at a low enough HP percentage, then you can kind of have them sit on the front line and eat some attacks because they won't take the damage, hopefully. But there's also like you can do that with Desperation, where you have a more player phase focused unit where you double a unit before they can counterattack.
Yeah, and this one you have Alacrity, which is the same thing, which is also
so it's the different names for each skill that can sometimes change between the games, which is confusing, but the systems are there and they translate well enough that
Yeah,
it's
in
not
terms of
too
like
difficult
building
to
off of its
follow.
predecessors, like this has the most references to like the past entries because of the whole
I
emblem
mean,
system,
being get
and
yeah,
like
exactly.
each of them have like various things from like each of the games that they're in. Like Celica, the
Hmm.
game she's from, Fire Emblem Gaiden, and then the remake Echoes is like magic. When you use it, you take damage
Yep.
to deal it, and when you have Celica equipped onto a character and they deal a magical attack, it'll deal a little bit of damage to them to deal extra damage to like the enemy and shit like that. And yeah, it's like this extra level of like a care and the sort of references, but like reflected in
Yeah.
gameplay of the
History. It's
shits.
history.
Yeah,
Like
exactly. It's cool.
this is a long running franchise
Yeah.
that has a ton of games, and obviously too many according to the Smash
Oh, sure.
community.
Too many characters in Smash.
But like with
I
a
want to
game
lyric
like
Smash next.
Engage, like you can reference it without being,
Yeah.
self-masturbatory or like circle
It's really
jerking
cool the way
because it
they,
is
yeah.
it's the history of the games.
And again, I haven't played a lot of the older ones, but I still like I'm sort of aware of like the way that some of them work. Like Leaf in his game uses like he's able to use like every weapon type sort of. So that's sort of what his emblem like is an embodiment of. Like he gives proficiencies to all the different weapon types, and then also he has like a bunch of different engage weapons that he gets from the start. So it's pretty cool. It's just a great video game. Again, the story I don't care. Like whatever. It's not the best in terms of that. I'm not going to pretend like it
The
is.
gameplay,
The gameplay is
actual
rock
video
solid.
gaming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess my other complaint is there's like the Somnial, which is the little like headquarters HQ thing. My main problem with Three Houses is, and I know you had this also, but I would spend way too much fucking time in the goddamn monastery. It burnt me out of the experience a little bit. And the Somnial is a good step down from it, but I would like to see it step down even further, like the time in between combats, because like again, like there are certain activities that give you this resource that's really good to have for the like combat gameplay stuff.
Yeah.
And the way to do that is to spend all this extra time doing this random shit. And I wish it was a little bit lower. Like I think Fire Emblem Fates hit a good spot of like here's just like your little castle thing, and you fuck around with these 5 things, which takes like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's solid. Like
That was not very
I'm
in-depth.
cool if it's something slightly longer than that, but like sometimes I am spending like as long on a map as I am outside of it doing the various like activity things, and it does get a little bit annoying in that way, which I felt with every playthrough, but I'm still doing it anyways because I need it. I need the SP or I need the fucking bond fragment, whatever they're called.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The gameplay, it just keeps you coming back.
It keeps me
so
coming back, and
you have to put up with it.
I plan
gotta put
on
up with
doing
it.
2 more runs of this thing in the future, so I'm gonna have to continue to be put up with it some more. But yeah, still super enjoying my time with this. And once I get through it, I'll eventually go back to Echoes of Wisdom, and then maybe who knows from there. We'll see. So yeah, that is my big gaming update, Peter. That's it.
All right. Well, in terms of music this past month, there hasn't been much. I talked about it, but December and January are very slow months for music for the most part. Not a ton of new releases. But I did have a couple of music recommendations of artists that I kind of an artist that I kind of skipped over during my 2024 season. A Korean artist called Meaningful Stone. She dropped an album this year called Angel Interview, and she also has one album from a couple years ago. But I've heard her on Spotify Shuffle, and I was immediately impressed by how lush and beautiful the instrumentation is. She's a dream pop / indie pop artist. It's just incredibly lush and beautiful production. Her voice is very ethereal and kind of fits with the emotions and the vibes of the music. I was just super impressed. Very, very, very listenable and like calm and mellow and just like I said, pretty. Very, very much a fan.
Yeah, nice.
She only has 2 albums out, and both of them are really good. So definitely recommend checking her out. And then recently, first album that I've really saved that has come out this year. Came from a band called Asian Glow, another Korean-based artist. They I have been making waves in the indie kind of underground psychedelic circuit, I guess. It's really strange. There's a bit of a collaboration slash overlapping music circle that consists of bands like Asian Glow, Paranol, and Weather Day, and a few other like weird kind of noise pop and noise rock adjacent groups. And this new one from Asian Glow is just another kind of entry into this long kind of list of really great music that this group slash movement, I don't know, has released. It's called 1110011. So, you know, take that album name as you will. It's very good. Really kind of loud and noisy, but also bright and like intricate and detailed. Really interesting sort of indie-tronica elements. Like I said, bright and kind of electronic, but also just like great rock instrumentation. Really good production. Yeah, very, very happy with this new album. This whole group that I kind of mentioned with like Asian Glow, Paranol, there's this, I think, Portuguese band, Sonas Tanam Conta, or Brazilian, and Weather Day, like they all kind of bleed into this larger oeuvre of like kind of loud, noisy, slacker, emo music that I've been really fucking with over the past few years. So recommend them, checking them out if you ever want something a little more energetic. And it's maybe a little harsh on the ears, but just because it's noise pop. But this one album, I would say, isn't too bad or too disconcerting, and would be a good kind of intro into this world of music. But that takes me to the end.
Nice. Those were all things from 2024 still.
Asian Glow just dropped that. This past week, so
yeah, nice.
Pretty recent from that album. But yeah, not much has dropped this year. Obviously, we're still in the first week so far, but I'm looking forward to whatever's coming down the line. I think FKA Twigs is supposed to be dropping Eusexia soon, which I have high expectations of, considering all the singles for this album have been really good. But we'll just have to see. Hopefully it's as good of a year for music as it was last year.
Yeah.
Last year was great.
Yeah. Do you normally get like discovered too much shit from the Spotify shuffle, or is that just was that just kind of random this time?
Not super often. Honestly, this past December, I haven't been really discovering a ton of new music. I've mostly been listening to the stuff that I listened to for the past year. So just like kind of my greatest hits from what I discovered in 2024, as opposed to trying to find new music. Just because there's not a ton of new things releasing. But also because I know, like, sometimes it's nice to just listen to music you already listen to. And you already know you like.
That's my game. Yeah, because on the subject of music, for me, I got nothing basically. I mean, like I've listened to probably like 6 songs or whatever since last we spoke, but like, you know,
some Christmas songs probably.
Yeah, probably. I don't really
holiday
remember.
stuff.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how that shit goes. I only listened to it once. I can't remember that. You can't expect me to remember a song just from listening to it once. I got to listen to that shit a billion times over and over and over again. You know. So yeah, that's the music section, brought to you by Peter, and with a small comment from me. So now on to books, which I have one thing. It's not the thing that you're hoping for, but it is one thing.
No, that's fair. That's fair. I've read one thing as well,
Yeah,
and it's not anything that I have a glowing recommendation for. So.
Oh, really? But what about the queer book?
That's true. I did read that.
Hey.
So okay, maybe I'll add.
Kick us off with that.
Yeah, queer.
I mean, you already talked about the movie.
As I mentioned,
Yeah.
It's very strange, and his writing is very like it's a weird way of writing. It's a bit disjointed, and you get to kind of see into multiple characters' perspective, which I really liked, specifically after coming from the movie, because that was something I left wanting more of, or maybe not wanting more of. I was satisfied with what was depicted in the movie, but I was interested to see maybe what more layers there were. And that's exactly what I got from the book. It was a fairly short book with a really interesting character at the center of it. It's fairly autobiographical, and it's full of self-loathing and loneliness and desire and love and self-hatred, and it's a strange, sad, but also really interesting read. Yeah, it's a very particular book that I want to read more of his stuff now, because it was definitely an evocative read.
Yeah.
But happy that I checked out the movie, and then happy that it led me to the book.
Right. Because how often does it happen for you where you like you see the movie and then you find out that it's like based on a book or something, and then you go like,
yeah,
check that out. Like, how
not often.
Yeah.
This is like the first time. I often do find myself wanting to read the books, like specifically with what is it? Johnny Depp and Benicio del Toro. What is that? Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's obviously like American Psycho and other books that are like classic movies.
Yeah.
That have been adapted, or classic books that have been adapted into classic movies.
Yeah.
I did do that thing with No Country for Old Men.
Yeah.
Because I mean, classic book adapted to a classic movie, and I had obviously mostly coming into it knowing the movies, and so getting to read it just like adds another layer to it, and I don't know, it serves my appreciation for the movies even more, just adding that another perspective on what I already know is a story I like. So I enjoy doing it, and I want to do it more.
Yeah, that's always cool. Because I mean, like when we were kids, we're introduced to the idea of you need to read the book first and then the movie. When it's like, I don't think either order of it necessarily matters too much. Like
No,
you'll get
I
slightly
don't think
different
so.
things from doing it one way or the other, but like in theory, both are like near equally good like experiences to have.
Yeah.
You know, like any order of it.
There's cool. Yeah, it is, as you said, it is a different experience coming into it from vice versa order, but I think either of them are valid, and they are both a cool experience to have no matter what. Just more media literacy, whether it be through books or movies, why not add both to the same sort of form of media, or not form, both forms dealing with the same story. I think that will help you with whatever problems we as a culture have with media literacy or whatever that everyone's complaining about now. Maybe just do what we're doing.
Yeah.
I think we have it all figured out.
we on this channel, that's two individuals and the people who
Just
comment
us
and
two.
like and subscribe.
No one else.
Because I do also super value like the understanding the alternate versions of really anything that exists, like like different versions of what should be in theory the same story, like a book that mostly comes from the mind of one individual, and then a film that is made by an absolute shitload of them.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And for like in that way, and also like even like video games sort of face this too, where there's the whole remake remaster thing, or just like here's a separate version of it slightly that it's like some random thing, and like all of them together sort of paint like the full picture of here's what this thing in full sort of truly is, maybe. And there's the individual pieces of what that thing is, each individual version of it, which obviously we're totally free to just only explore one aspect of it or the other. I mean, especially for like movies to books. A movie, consuming it is so much easier than a book because it's going to take, in general, less time and also less investment of brain power and whatnot. And maybe slightly easier access also, maybe, in the modern day. I'm not so sure, I guess. Yeah.
It depends on how people are accessing movies or books. But it is always strange having a piece of art that can be reinterpreted by an individual, usually the director, in their own way. And obviously this is not necessarily only going from books to movies, but it branches between forms of media into a web of kind of feeding creativity and individuality. So I like talented people finding things that they like and telling their own version of a story. I think it's creative. It's like I don't care if it's not a unique IP. I don't care if it's a sequel or whatever, so long as it's good. And I think that's really what it comes down to. If it's entertaining,
if it's nice,
Yes, it
over
just
anything
needs to be good.
Because some people think it's like an end-all be-all, like all remakes are bad and they should stop, sort of thing. When it's like
that's very much not the case.
Yeah, it's more complicated than that. I mean, even within this episode of stuff, you brought up Nosferatu. That story has been told billions of times, but has it been done in like the exact way that movie has done it in? No, and that it stands on its own in its unique way, despite the fact that the story has been explored in ways before. It's not just a regurgitation of that same thing. I guess on the other hand, you got Final Fantasy VII remake stuff, which is sort of telling a similar story from the original, but it's doing so in its own interesting way. It has maybe less justification to exist than, say, the Nosferatu movie.
And then at the bottom of the barrel, we have The Lion King.
Oh, yeah.
The live-action Lion King, where we have a remake.
Exactly.
With
we're touching every pillar of that in this one episode.
Because we don't have a problem with remakes and stuff. Just make it good, please. That is all we're asking for. That's all anyone is asking for. Make it creative. Make it interesting.
Make it stand on its own from the original in some way.
Just anything,
like a reason for a different version of it to exist. Like there's always a way to justify that. It's just finding it.
And maybe you say that The Lion King justifies it because of it's the CGI. It's incredible. It's
it's
wonder of
technology or something. Which maybe it is. I don't know.
But
it's shit though.
But if we're dealing with a movie that is supposed to be 2 hours long and has an entire story attached to it, then maybe a tech demo isn't necessarily justifying itself beyond maybe 20 minutes. We could have like a cool video that we could show everyone and whatever, but do we need to send this out to theaters and remake everything, remake the music, or just completely axe every element of creativity when it comes to animation and instead just do CGI rigging and the most bland movie making possible? I don't even know. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I got hung up on the phrase the fucking tech demo because I'm still watching Game Grumps Sonic 06 and they're like describing the game as that. They're like making jokes about that and like I guess that's basically what that fucking Lion King movie is. It's just we have the technology to do it, so let's do it. Let's not think about why we're doing it.
Exactly. Yep.
The Jurassic Park quote.
If it gets money, it's literally just a tech demo. It's all marketing. It's all marketing. It sucks. But regardless of the tangent, and regardless of the tangent we went on, what were you reading?
Yeah. I have one book thing that I was reading. It's not The Way of Kings. I'm so sorry to you and to the audience members who wanted me to be done with it already.
It'll happen eventually.
Yeah, it'll eventually, most definitely. I'll get back around to it at some point. But for this year, I want to read more manga and watch less anime as like a general thing, because that way I get like more things, and also like I do enjoy well, I enjoy manga more on average than I do anime, partly because the manga I've checked out tend to be better ones versus the anime. I'm more, for whatever reason, I'm more willing to like check out the dumber shits. But also just like I think like it's a better time overall because it's more streamlined, it's quicker. It's, I guess, the original source of it or whatever. And sometimes the anime adaptation is arguably better than the whatever thing, like Jujutsu Kaisen and Demon Slayer.
Yeah.
Like some of those, like it visually is more impressive in animation than it is in the manga for various reasons. And for this one, it had a decent season 1 adaptation of it, and then season 2 sort of got messed up for various reasons. And I watched season 1 of it, and then I was like, I'll probably check it out further and read it at some point. It's one that you've read. It's called One Punch Man. It's a it's a shonen new somewhat classic, I guess. It is shonen, right? It's not like one of those other manga things, because there's like like Shonen Jump, and there's some other Jump. They all jump for some reason. Like, what? Can you just do some other physical activity? Like what?
No,
I feel like Japan. Seinfeld. What's the deal with jumping? Or something. And this one's really nice. I already knew Yusuke Murata, the artist, man. I already knew he was like, even before reading it like any of his stuff, he was one of my favorite like manga artists. Like it's weird because I just see it like posted it around various stuff. I really love this style, and it's super solid. Like the visuals in this are so nice, and like anytime like the scale is brought back and it's like showing off like sometimes just the entire planet.
He gets the
Earth,
flex,
and it's it's like, okay, go
so
off. So
intricate, yep.
I guess for those who don't know, probably most people listening are weebs and they sort of know what One Punch Man is. In case you don't, for those who don't know, basically there was this dude, this author, and he wrote this webcomic series called One Punch Man, the same name, I guess. And it was just the silly little webcomic thing. It's mostly like a gag, sort of silly thing, with like just a really super cartoony art style. He's not an artist. He's just doing it for fun, sort of thing. And eventually, this dude Yusuke Murata, who wrote drew for other mangas, eventually, I guess, discovers it, and he's like, I must draw it or something. I don't know. That's like the legend of it, I guess.
Yeah.
That they sort of advertised in the first volume of One Punch Man. And so Yusuke Murata starts from the beginning of one story, and he sort of draws it start to ideally finish, which is the webcomic and manga both still ongoing?
So the webcomic is stopped. It's on hiatus, indefinite hiatus.
Damn.
And the manga is at the place that the webcomic left off.
Interesting.
Roughly.
So
they do different things, but it's the same storylines essentially right now.
Because you've read it, the whole thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Because like, and that's the problem with a lot of manga. It's like it's somewhat easy for it to become like, I don't know, larger than life, where it's I mean a person spends like their entire existence doing it. That's not quite what this is, because both of them had worked on other things besides this one story. Like one is the same dude who did Mob Psycho 100, which is also pretty nice. I watched the anime of that, which is a really good anime.
The webcomic art is rough. And it's the same thing with the One Punch webcomic.
You've read?
I haven't read it.
Mob Psycho?
I did read some of the One Punch and webcomics. And it's
for times where like the manga wasn't caught up and you just wanted to see the story.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then you went back to the manga when they were
exactly, because now the manga is
they're both caught up.
It has some of the best art of all. No, the manga's continuing to go along.
It still has a bit to catch up to.
No, we're right there. Like I think one is working with Murata now to write what is essentially original content.
Oh, I figured like the way it was working, it was like one was doing his thing, and then sort of working with Yusuke Murata to like adapt it a little bit. Because when you said that the thing was on hiatus, I figured that we're stopped temporarily until one gets its shit together, and he continues the webcomic, so then we could continue the manga.
he's
Yeah.
not doing the webcomic.
Which to me makes sense, because it's like, okay, you have
Yeah.
this professionalized dude and his team
Yeah, exactly.
working their ass off for your story. It's like, yeah, it makes sense that, like, okay, you just transition to this new thing being the main one from here on out. So to me, that makes sense. Which I didn't think that's how it worked, but that's probably better than whatever thing. And yeah, it begins as sort of a gag thing, like many of these. I'm sort of used to it by this point in some ways, where it's like a manga. They're like doing the first couple of chapters. It doesn't really seem like they know what they're doing. They're just sort of making stuff up as they go along, and then they sort of fall into like some sort of pattern or like larger story that they find.
Yep.
Sort of like Berserk does this. Slam Dunk is definitely one of those that does that. Has like a weird like early on, like what the fuck is this about? Like what's happening? And then it actually like, oh, here's stuff that's happening now. And
it
One
is very
Punch
much
Man,
a marketing thing.
Yeah. It definitely feels like an editor stepping in and be like, all right, we have to get you have to make real shit. Come on, get on your ass. Because and like that aspect of it seems a little bit surface level. It's like just he starts off just basically he's this OPS dude, and that's the whole premise. And he's this sort of he's super powerful. He beats everybody in one punch. And it's funny because he's sort of incompetent to a certain extent in like establishing himself in like really any aspect of that, because people don't really believe like he's this OPS dude until they literally see it in front of their eyes. And then even if they do, sometimes they like come to random like justifications of like, oh, that villain was already beat up before he punched him, or like the person or whatever was like paid by him to get knocked out or something like that. And it does create the funny scenarios that happen sort of throughout its runtime. I'm about between a third and halfway through. I'm on the arc right now where there's this hunter, this like hero hunter dude, sort of running around and beating up random dudes. And the focus on it eventually, like it starts very much on him, and he gets like this cool like sidekick companion mech dude. What's his fucking name?
Goro,
yeah. And he's cool. And like the focus eventually becomes less and less on him and more on world stuff. I mean, I guess is what's happening. And that stuff to me is a little bit less interesting. Like, most of the superheroes are just, I mean, it's like you're coming up with tertiary superhero characters to exist. So it's just like, all right, here's their name, here's their look, here's their one thing they do type of thing. And it's like, for some reason, we're giving them like more screen time, essentially. Like there's some that I like the old man dude, whose name I also forget. I like King quite a bit. He's funny. And yeah, and like there are funny situations still happening and stuff, and like but I don't know. There's like the one of them stands out to me, and that's the dude who, like, I like the premise of him where he's in prison, and the way he like functions as a hero is he breaks out of prison to like go arrest dudes, and then he brings them back to the prison that he like stays in himself, and he like basically just watches over them to like make sure that they're not getting up to no good anymore. And I like the idea of it, but like the exact execution of it is like the way he punishes them if they misbehave is weird. He sexually assaults them. Like,
exactly.
It's like
it's Japan's weird relationship with
homosexuality.
Homosexuality and being gay. It's like they don't know how to deal with
it. They don't understand it.
It's really weird. But
it
is played up for laughs.
It's played up for laughs, but
like you're not taking it seriously. But also, it's like,
but it's not funny. It's not funny.
It's
just like, come on.
It's weird
because he's the only gay man in this entire or gay character in like this entire thing. And if that's the only representation of it, it's like it's such a bad taste.
It says a lot.
Which again, like is less. I mean, sure, maybe you could argue it is a problem with one as an individual or something, but it's really a much wider societal issue that
it's a cultural
Japan
thing.
is dealing with, and that part of the manga was probably written like 10 years ago or something, and a lot of this type of stuff has been rapidly changing, for the better within recent times. It's again like a lot more recent shit's developing with that, and Japan is, for first world countries, whatever, it's sort of behind in it, I guess, and they're still not there quite yet. But yeah, that was just like the one thing that's like, come on, really? Like, Yeah, whatever. But it's far from like the worst. Like in terms of like I just talked about Shield Hero. That shit's annoying for many reasons. Like this is just like the one thing. In that's sort of like that. And yeah, it's a funny time when the action does happen. It's really cool, and like you can completely understand like everything that's happening within it, which is super important for a comic, for an illustrated action thing. In general, is like action legibility. I mean, we talked about the Fast and Furious things. I have no idea what the fuck's happening when there's 30 billion cuts per second. I have no idea what's happening. And those types of things. And he could get sort of like an equal issue occur in manga. I think I haven't read either of these. I've read part of My Hero Academia. I think people have some problem with the action in that, and also Jujutsu Kaisen. Some people have the problem with the action in the manga, and just like being able to legitimately tell what is happening it can be difficult. It is difficult to like relay that information to the audience of like, you know, legitimately here's what talking. Which is why you get a lot of characters of like, he blipped from here to here, or wow, he's fast because he just basically teleported around. Like that's why you get these people like announcing
reaction panels are always easier and cheaper to make than a full-on impact shot of
it's super
whatever's
hard to pull
happening.
off. And I don't know if it's the best example of the One Punch Man, but I'd say a good example of it, because it's fairly easy to tell like what's happening, and like the because it's super important, because again, this dude, his premise is he defeats opponents in one punch. So like his punch is super OP as shit, and like whenever it does happen, it's super clear. Like, oh, he just absolutely demolished like whatever thing he's facing. And it's that aspect of it is really well handled, and it's a fairly necessary aspect of it. Like I couldn't imagine this story existing without the art, shit going on.
It's a completely different story. It is way more like you get to feel more of the gags in the webcomic, whereas with this one you get to sit more with the characters in the wider world, and it grounds the humor more. In some great art.
Which again, the world.
I agree.
Yeah, the world to me so far doesn't feel like super deep or anything. It's for me, the thing holding it together is One Punch Man going around and like beating up random dudes and people like not necessarily knowing. And he's like this weird, like sort of incompetent, but also like he simultaneously seems to care and not care about certain things that happen to him. Character. Which I don't know how to feel about, because it's like. He has to, cover up certain things about like who he is, like taking it up so that like people don't blame other people for certain things. And it's, I don't know, it's weird because he doesn't care, but he sort of does, and it's I'm in this weird part of the manga right now where he's in like this tournament arc thing where meanwhile a random dude is like beating up a bunch of people. It's
there is always that dissonance with this series where the majority of combat is not,
which is interesting, and it makes sense because again he is OP and he's just punching
exactly. He ends the fights, so the rest of the fights are dealing with they're going to be much vast array of characters that actually have more stakes, and that can lose,
which is interesting, for sure. It's just I feel less of an investment because those characters, most of them are.
It's just a sense of disconnect and dissonance that we have the solution right here. We know where he is, but for various narrative reasons,
he's like he's goofing off doing some other.
He does his own thing, which again is sort of values. It is. I think they play it off because it's under the branch of it's a gag or comedy manga. We don't really have to take it has that
it could fall back onto itself of being like don't take it too seriously type
it's just goofy. But once you're on a long arc, so the Monster Society arc is a very long arc, but once you get to the end, it's some of the coolest manga that you'll read.
I've heard good things about the more recent parts about it. That's cool.
So it constantly evolves, and it's a large arc that deals with like a ton of different sub arcs and sub characters. But you're enjoying it, and you'll continue to enjoy it. It's a solid series.
I look forward to hitting the rest of it, which I might finish by next time. I'm not sure, or I'll get close to it at the very least. But solid stuff right there.
unfortunately on my end, I couldn't read as much good stuff as I would like, because I'm obligated, as I am in a book club,
Oh yeah, yeah,
to
yeah.
read things that
Yeah,
are
yeah, yeah.
recommended to me
You
from
have to.
various friends.
This is the time where you're forced to. Those Disney
Indeed.
remakes you did on your own accord. This you're forced
Yes.
to.
So this time we got to read a mafia romance, mafia
Interesting.
smut romance
Oh,
called
okay.
The Sweetest Oblivion. Yeah, it was not good. It's just not for me. I think I've come to understand this at this point. I've read smut. I've read, I've read fantasy for women. I've read now dark romance. I've read a lot of things that I am well aware that I would not like, right? But I go
Stuff
into it
not at
to
all tailored to
experience
you.
it. I go into it with to experience and to try and like analyze the different tastes that go into why do people choose to read a book like this, where oh, the coolest thing about the love interest is that he kills people and he's a bad guy, he's a bad boy, he's dark but he's so sexy. It's that kind of book.
Yeah.
And
What's it called
I
again?
think it just The Sweetest Oblivion.
Okay.
I think it just comes down to reading books for different reasons.
Yeah.
You get different. This is essentially a fantasy book, for largely a female audience.
Sure.
I don't get that out of it when I read.
Yeah.
For the most part, I would like to, engage with the book and get something out of it, whether that be an exploration of interesting themes or a character that I can really root for, or an overall narrative that I find engaging and satisfying. Some people just want to kind of turn on essentially what is like a soap opera, and just kind of like, it's not turn your brain off. I'm not trying to be anti-intellectual about it, but it is, maybe the lowest rung on the ladder, lowest common denominator, where it's just
Smut is smut.
what is smut is smut. And if you're when you're reading that,
You know what you're
you
getting into.
know what you want, and you know what you're getting into, and it is not what I want, nor what I want to get into from now on, I think. So there's not really much to say about this book,
Yeah,
other
okay.
than it was not written for me. I probably
Power to people who
shouldn't have
enjoy
read it. Yes, but it was recommended to me as
Sure.
a bit of a.
It wasn't recommended, it was
from
forced
one of
on
my
you.
friends. Yes, but it for all in good fun.
No, yeah,
and
exactly.
for good reason.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I'm glad I read it. No, that's a lie. But I did, and there it is. That's all I can say about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I feel like we shouldn't undervalue like this idea of doing this, because it's like the
No.
male equivalent of like the male fantasy is so much more of a forefront to the canon
Exactly.
of stories in general than
Right.
the female
Yeah.
ones. And like
This is Transformers for women. Not really, but I'm boiling it down to get the point
Sure,
across.
yeah, it's a comparative.
There are things that are made very, very much with men in mind.
Yeah, yeah,
many,
yeah.
many fantastical fantasies that we've consumed
like
over the
yeah,
years.
like most of the like even
that-
today, like
hey.
most of the shit we talked about, it's
Yeah.
sort of that to a certain extent.
Exactly. And I'm not saying I'm fans of them.
Yeah.
I'm saying I have the same problems with them in general.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's so important to get to that other side and engage with it in order to get a better understanding of why you like what you like, just
Yeah.
in general.
But like especially if you're a dude and you know
Mm-hmm.
are on the like the like a fucking like, because for us it's so easy of like, oh yeah, sure, that's just whatever sort of our
Right,
version
yeah.
of like fantasy that exists. And like that a girl just has to sit by and like, okay, well that just has to accept like, okay, that's the thing that people are talking about for whatever reason, because like at the start of like movies, for example, everything was decided by them, made for them, made by them, made for them, made about them. It was like a cycle, and it's sort of breaking apart in the modern day, where we're getting slightly more female leads, slightly more female directors and writers. It's still not even by any marks,
No.
but it's a lot better than it once was.
Yeah.
And for like yeah, like I mean, like why not challenge yourself a little bit as a man to see like the other side of like the story, type of
Yeah,
thing.
and it's not like, oh, I'm patting myself on the back
No,
for
I
this,
know,
but
I
it's
know,
like
I know you're
if
not.
you find, yeah, but like it's not something that you should do in general. It's just like if you are, I think people should just in general
Yeah, why not?
try to understand where people are coming from.
Exactly.
I think that's just across the board. Have some self-respect. Understand that you are an
Don't watch the same
individual. The world
isekai.
doesn't revolve around you, nor who you are and the values that you have. You are a microscopic piece
Being,
of dust
entity,
in a wider
whole thing,
cosmere.
yeah.
That why not, why not try and engage with
Hell yeah.
what other people are engaging with? You might not like it, but if
And that's fine.
you have enough time. I know everyone always says like there's never enough time. You can only spend so much of your time on frivolous things. Why would you waste your time doing things that you don't enjoy when you get nothing out of it? But you can get something out of it. And what
It's understanding.
what you get out of it is
It's up to you,
can
sort of.
boil it down to understanding, but also you can gain value out of that in many different ways, whether that be through your own understandings to the people around you, or just your wider understanding of the culture and the world that you are a part of. Maybe don't feel so much like a speck of dust on the wind, but
Sure.
instead feel like a puzzle and a wider landscape of a million different pieces.
Yeah, why not?
So, yeah.
And that's
it's
exactly what
something-
you got out of this smut.
That is exactly
That's
what I
exactly
got out
what
of
you
this
got.
smut. Yep. Yeah, that is why I read
The
it.
exact takeaway
For-
you had.
For the value that
Yeah.
it brought to my being.
Exactly. Nice. Yeah, that'll do it for books, I suppose. Onto YouTube, I have two major items, or just two items. I don't know how many you got, if any.
Just a couple, yeah.
Okay. Well, I could start us off with a man you mentioned earlier, Jacob Geller. You recommended him last time. Famous video essayist. I think the first one I watched was that Zelda video of his. Every Zelda is the darkest Zelda. And that one is like, I've watched a decent amount of YouTube. I've watched a lot of, mostly video game stuff, honestly, probably. And a lot of Zelda stuff also is included within that. And I've, over the course, have like seen so many different videos say like nearly the exact same things that he is saying in that video, but none of them said it in like the exact way that he
way.
does.
Yeah.
It was like sort of like I don't know, mind-boggling, eye-opening, like whatever type of way you want to describe it. It's just like interesting to me that like you could, like I guess it's just shows the power
have so
of
much
speech
familiarity.
and like good writing within like an essay or something, where it's like the exact way it's wording, like even though I sort of know most of everything that's going on, like to see it like in the exact form that it takes by the end of it is still such a sort of powerful thing, even though it's this is information that has been repeated in my brain many times over the course of YouTube and watching various stuff from that. So I definitely enjoyed that video, and I also watched that parts in bad movies that I really like, or whatever that one was, which I really enjoyed that one also. And again, not to suck myself off, but I have various like random ideas that in theory I would like to make that's sort of like that, where I'd sort of pick like random things that have like a pattern to them in my mind, and I like sort of would present them in a particular way. Not saying I would do so in the exact way he does, or is to like a strong, good extent that he does. In my head, theoretically, those things exist.
Yes. Because we have so much knowledge of the different forms of media.
The two of us
or
combined,
whatever.
Exactly. That's why we're doing this channel. That's why
that's
why we're preaching to the masses.
Yeah, it's a cool way of setting up a video.
Yeah.
It's just having an interesting thought, and then finding all of the different forms of media that support that thought, and then getting to write, a short blurb on each of those things, and then stringing them along into a video essay.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, that takes a bunch of skill, and it's way easier said than done.
Totally.
But you can kind of see amongst the best video essayists in the game. And I think Jacob is probably one of them, where it comes down
pretty
to
close
the
to
writing.
the top, yeah.
Yeah, it comes down to the writing, and then can you get your themes across?
And the editing is pretty good also.
In the editing, yeah, obviously he has a ton of polish,
Yeah.
and some great research. Yeah, no, I love his stuff, and I'm glad I could recommend him to you.
Exactly, yeah. That's pretty much all I got to say about the man. I would
Yeah.
back you up in recommending him to people if they didn't check it out last time. If one of us saying that you should check out the thing wasn't good enough, well, now it's both of us. So now you have to. Okay.
For you, I also would recommend his one called Nothing Ever Stops Existing.
Okay.
That was the one that got me to check out
Made you fall in love.
Exorcist.
Oh, okay.
Because that's the one where he talks about it, and it's one of my favorite videos of his, where he just gets into like this weird niche kind of idea of existence and future impermanence of facts and infinity, and ties it all up into one
That's cool.
video that is incredibly easy to watch.
That shit is
very
on
cool
my
video.
watch list now.
What I've been watching over the course of December is just a bunch of random shit. But as I was going through all of these live action Disney adaptations, I found myself wanting to watch Your Movie Sucks video on part 1 of The Lion King.
Oh, you only just
'Cause
checked it
it's
out
just-
recently?
No, this is a rewatch.
Oh my
and
goodness.
It's like a 2-hour long
Yeah.
video.
For us,
and
it's 1
I
hour
also
or less.
rewatched his Kimba one, just because
Both are-
he does
both are
such a
great.
good job of. You can tell this comes from a place of passion. Like
He loves the Lion King
loves
original.
the Lion King. Like he is such a big fan, and for what Disney did to remake something and bastardize it like they did, he hates it.
He took it personally.
Hates it so much, and he takes it personally.
Yeah.
And he explains every single thing that was changed,
Which is cool.
and why it's wrong. Like literally, frame by frame, basically.
Yeah, I
Like he goes through the
remember-
movie, he goes through the music, he goes through the color grading, everything, and it does help you kind of identify why something might feel off. It's just like while you're watching The Lion King, it's like it's the remake 2019 whatever.
Right.
Like it's easy to turn your brain off and just be like, yeah, that was bad, but like I don't know why. It's just like it was boring. But like no, it's not boring. Like obviously the story is iconic. It's a classic. It's Hamlet, it's Shakespeare, and the music is classic. It's, won a million different Oscars or whatever, Grammys. Why didn't this movie work for me? You get a video like YMS's kind of breaking down everything that changed, and then why those changes don't work, and why your brain is thinking, well, I'm just remembering a movie that I watched 20 years ago that I loved so much, and this is nowhere near it.
Yeah.
And getting to kind of quantify the changes and identify why they don't work is very helpful and very cool. And then Kimba obviously is a different beast, because that's like a whole ass YouTube investigation into something that no one knew about, but it was like in the wider cultural lexicon of, oh, the Lion King just stole from the Japanese Kimba studio.
Yeah,
but like
all of that
everyone just loved to parrot that without ever
There's still-
having, like,
there's still
no
doing
one
it. I would
ever
still,
read
like-
it.
Yeah, I
I
would
know.
still like see people do it, and then people are
Yeah.
like, watch the
It's like,
fucking
just
Kimba
watch this.
reviews, you bitches. Yeah.
Yep, because no one ever did their due diligence, and it's so funny to think that this fucking Canadian furry just would win out and like did the research. He did the homework that no one else would,
Yeah.
and then release it onto YouTube, and everyone was just like, "Oh shit, huh? Who knew?" I
Total
guess.
ponage to
Yep.
to so many people. Yeah.
Yeah, so great stuff from him, and obviously he has a ton of movie reviews that I
Yeah.
watch regularly, and
So
I
do
like hearing his opinion on stuff.
Yeah, he's very he's very snobby, and so some
Yeah,
people
he's
really
very
don't
cynical and
don't like him for
like,
that sort of aspect of
yeah.
it. But like he has good takes. Like I don't think there's any denying that.
No,
Like he really knows the genre of films
Yeah.
in general.
I fully disagree with him on
Oh yeah,
multiple movies, but like,
totally.
I mean, who cares? Like
Yeah.
that's the thing.
Yeah.
I
Again,
don't need to
people.
agree
Yeah.
with someone on everything. Like, please, I should never have to do that.
Like if people ever take our opinions too personally, please
Yeah,
don't do that
just
because
like,
like your opinion should just morph into whatever ours is. You know, it's like.
yes, exactly. Don't think about it. Just accept it. Thank you.
Yeah. I have another. Again, I've established before. I enjoy the history of things. You know, going back to like the roots of how does this thing exist? Like, how do we exist in the modern form of things? And for that Life Itself documentary, I've sort of discovered, oh well,
Hmm.
here's like the modern day YouTube sit down, let's talk about movies, like just two people doing stuff like that. It's from that movie was that sort of TV show that they were doing.
Hmm.
Wow, that's cool. A thing that they were doing. And there's this other genre of YouTube, which is video game reviews, and it's just a sort of one dude going in. They maybe have some sort of like skits or a narrative going on, and they're like reviewing some video game or something. And like the pinnacle of like going back to the ends of time in the YouTube era of this sort of thing, or at least one of the dudes who was like did the very start of it was Cinemassacre, specifically with the series The Angry Video Game Nerd, and I watched all of the seasons of it except for the most recent one, which is like
Okay, okay.
because he has like these compilation videos of just like all the fucking videos in like one thing. And I watched 17 of those are released right now. He's released more like solo videos, so I'm just waiting for him to put it in another compilation thing so I could just run on through it. And it was a good time getting through all of these. It doesn't take very long, surprisingly. I mean, it's long. Each video is an hour to up to 4, and there's 17 of them or whatever. So for
Hmm.
most people, it'll take a while, but I was doing it while sort of doing other things. But I was still able to pay enough attention to like the things that were going on and like Scott the Woz or like even John trying to remind me of like his middle to early era of stuff of like the way he would just like talk about a game, show the footage, have like some commentary going on, and then like have some like random like story gag little thing
Hmm.
going on, like super similar stuff going on there, and like it's I think the probably the best seasons are like 2 through 5, which is a bit weird. But like the early stuff to me feels a bit more genuine. Like season 1, he like is sort of learning the thing, like he's sort of figuring out like what he wants to do. And by even season 2, I feel like he sort of figures that out. And he's a guy who like his stuff doesn't really change at all. Like the camera quality is stronger. I guess probably the microphone or like whatever quality is stronger too over time. But like the fundamentals of it is mostly remained the same. Which especially when watching all of these things back to back, it becomes a little bit repetitive, I guess, in some ways.
Hmm.
And like the further along you get in his sort of video uploads for the series, the more like he wrangles in other various random people into it. Which like the skits that like the more people that are involved in the skits, the less sort of like into them I am. Like I sort of like it when he just has like one dude or he's just talking to himself like the whole video. Like to me, those are like more entertaining, I guess. And I would probably recommend seasons 2 through 5 to check out from him, and then also there's like various episodes where he has like random guests on. So like anytime you see like a featuring thing for like one of his videos, you should watch those because all of
Hmm.
those ones are quite nice and good. And yeah, super glad to check this dude out. This goddamn YouTube like his story, like I don't know, he's a big deal to a lot of people, and he influenced a good deal of these you know video game YouTubers who
Yeah.
review games and
Cool
that
to
sort
get
of
back to
stuff.
the origins
Hmm.
or near the origins of everything that we've
Take
been
a
consuming for all our lives.
got to go back to the past to play
Yeah.
shitty video games that suck ass. Peter, that's this man. That's what he do.
That's what he do.
Yeah. So I enjoyed my time
Uh,
with that. I'll check out his future shits again. I'm waiting until he does the.
mhm.
I'll check out one upload from him a year. Is this the full season thing, or whatever? But yeah.
All right. On my end, again, I was just watching a bunch of random stuff, but
Hmm.
I came across a video essay that I want to send your way,
Yes, sir.
called, you might have already checked it out. I don't know. It's definitely up our alley. It's
Okay.
called "Our Culture is Eating Itself," by a channel called Solar Sands. I'm not sure if you're familiar.
I don't think so.
But it was something that I saw come across my homepage for a while, and I kind of looked at it and I was like, oh, I might check that out eventually.
Hmm.
And during this past December, I eventually checked it out, and it was a timely, very timely moment to check it out because it's essentially a hate letter to everything that is modern cinema.
Yeah.
And it's something that we've been talking about a ton today,
Hmm.
because he deals at everything from sequels to remakes to adaptations
Hmm.
to, just what he says and refers to as cultural cannibalism, where we are now regurgitating the same stories over and over again
Yeah.
without anything new. And I think I don't necessarily agree with everything he says in the video.
Hmm.
I think he is maybe a bit cynical and
Sure.
riding the line of, you know, those hate channels like the Critical Drinker or whoever who are just like hate watch everything and only ever has anything bad to say and just like very little, you know, substance to their criticisms. But I think this one is a good video that does a good job of kind of putting to words the feelings that many of us are having, the exhaustion that many of us are having with the state of movies in this case.
Hmm.
But it's a larger cultural thing
Sure.
where it is just a circle jerk of you like reusing the same IPs and the same stories
Hmm.
and the same cultural cachet in order to bank that in with the audience that is already familiar with something, so they are more willing to give it a chance. And it's just like, why isn't that working? Why
Hmm.
hasn't it worked? What is the like what are the problems with it, and what are the solutions? Like why can we say that this is a bad thing? Like can't we just let people enjoy what they want? And it's like, oh, just turn on something and you're familiar with it, so just accept it and enjoy
Hmm.
it. It's like, no, I think it's warranted and it's necessary to call for something more and to support the artists that are doing new things. And even if some of these remakes and sequels and adaptations that we've been talking about are good,
Hmm.
we still need creativity. We still need originality. What that takes the form of is obviously up to interpretation. But I like this essay just kind of putting to words the problems that we have been discussing for a long time,
Hmm.
and like not necessarily creating solutions to these problems,
Hmm.
but at least voicing them and getting making ourselves heard. The video popped off and it's like at
Yeah.
almost
1.6
1.5
million
million.
is what
Yeah,
it's at right now.
yeah, over the course of 2 months, which is
It's quite a
pretty
bit. Yeah.
impressive. Um,
Yeah. Like
yeah,
we already talked about like our feelings of it mostly in this episode.
yeah,
Like we're
like
we're cool if
we've
it
talked.
exists so long as it's good and like is
Yeah.
unique and stuff. Because there's still
Hmm.
ways for them to be original. Like apart from the whatever thing they're coming from. Original doesn't
Yeah.
always mean good. But it can lead to, I mean, just justifying its existence better. And
Hmm.
yeah, I think what you're summarizing the video as does reflect, a lot of opinions that are flying about in the modern day, especially for movies,
Hmm.
to a certain extent for video games also, because they're also in the
Exactly.
remake age, the remake fucking, I don't know. That like both fields are experiencing that sort of thing. And yeah, it does feel at times like, damn, why, like they're so
It's
daunting,
exhausting.
and it's yeah,
Yeah.
exhausting, and like because it's usually the biggest things that people are talking about and stuff like
Right.
that, and they
Like
feel
it is the
overwhelming.
cultural cornerstone,
Yeah.
and that is why it's it's hard to ignore.
Mm-hmm.
It's like everyone is experiencing the same thing because it is so first and foremost in everyone's mind.
Mm-hmm.
It's in all of the media, all the culture, and you're like, damn, at some point, when is enough?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is it ever going to be enough? You gotta hope so, but it's a strange world we live in now.
Yeah.
With the amount of content we have and the access we have to all this content.
Oh yeah, totally.
We are certainly, we're no stranger to it, and we're thriving in it. We're down in the dirt, rolling around like little piggies, But it's something that you have to find a balance in, and
yeah, totally.
I think I have. But I understand that that balance is always going to change.
Mm-hmm.
As life comes at you quick, you have to figure out what your values are and your priorities. And if you don't get that shit figured out, then you're going to be slipping down the water slide of content abuse and circle jerking, Ouroboros, fucking.
Yeah, that's the thumbnail.
Just everything bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but
because
is it everything bad?
Yeah, because it is
it's a lot.
It is like a complicated issue too, because like somebody could be watching this video and they could like draw the conclusion of we are a part of the problem because we're mentioning like even these types of things in this very video, like the Disney shits, like even just talking about them and like further bringing them into attention or like the reattention of people's minds and stuff. But like they exist, so they by that alone. It has a value.
It is
to
worth discussing.
Be talked about. Yeah. And it's to me, there's no avoiding that. And it's like it is this weird issue of like obviously the thing that people can latch onto and discuss and like find some sort of I recognize this thing because of this type of thing. Because not everybody has the exact time that we have necessarily to go out there and try to discover things outside of that. And like even us, we still fall into I still want to check these things out. For whatever various reasons that we may have. So it is like this weird sort of issue that exists in the modern day. It's super first world problems, super duper first world problems, but it's like it's relevant to us in this this YouTube channel thing that we're running, especially for covering both films and games alike, as this is a fairly big issue in both.
It's
an interesting one.
You bring up a great point though. Like at the end of the day, none of this shit matters. Like it does to some extent because it is the culture, and the culture is like society, all that. But also it's like, man, some people are trying to put food on the table. It's like
people are starving.
Complaining about this. So it's a symptom of a larger problem that we are still trying to dig down and find the core of what it is. But man, society, am I right? I can't deal with that shit, so instead I'll just continue consuming and making videos about it when I talk about it. But
we're gonna try to capitalize on that shit as much as possible. 6 views on average per episode. Give me all them. Give me all those.
I'll
views.
take that money. I'll take it.
Oh, that 10 cents. Give me those. So do you have any other YouTube things? Or was that?
No.
Cool.
I think that brings us
Then we will
to the
end
end.
it on that positive note. On that, because exactly. We've the whole episode has been about this sort of shit. Why not end off on there? So,
full circle.
Full circle, just like the
continue to
Ouroboros.
circle continuously.
Tomorrow we'll be back with some other remake thing. I don't know. I'm just guessing ahead of time.
Most likely.
Yeah. All right, but cool. Thank you for witnessing this stuff. Peter, take it out.
No.